Exhausted from another long day, Masato collapses onto his couch, questioning his future. As a second-year corporate employee, he feels like nothing more than a corporate slave. Trapped in a black company, he endures brainwashing policies and endless unpaid overtime. Co-workers collapse around him, while an angry boss screams about terrible work attitudes. Having no other options, he has grown accustomed to this desperate daily struggle. The constant grind drains his soul until he loses all sense of living. Suddenly, he remembers a single important task he must complete before sleeping. Reaching out, he firmly grasps a watering can to tend to his plants. He slides the door open to visit his small, private balcony garden. A rare, genuine smile finally touches his face in the quiet night air. This simple hobby provides the only motivation he has left to keep going. He recalls a time when he first discovered the idea of self-sufficient living. The prospect of a comfortable lifestyle sparked a flicker of hope within him. He envisioned a peaceful life, harvesting fresh, vibrant produce under the sun. Inspired by that dream, he started gardening to reclaim a piece of himself. 2 days ago, one specific fruit had begun its transformation toward ripening. Crouching down, he prepares to harvest the fruit he has carefully nurtured. Upon closer inspection, his expression shifts from anticipation to pure, utter confusion. In his palm sits a bizarre fruit covered in strange, swirling black patterns. He stares in shock, questioning what could have possibly happened to his tomato. Worried the strange fruit might be diseased, he hopes it won't infect his other plants while holding it. Against his better judgment, he leans in and takes a sudden, large bite of the patterned fruit. Instantly, he swallows the pulp and reacts with wide-eyed shock as a strange sensation takes firm hold. Regretting his impulsive action, he panics and calls himself an idiot for mindlessly eating the mysterious tomato. His mind begins to haze over, painfully, as he wonders what on earth he was thinking just then. Collapsing backward, he fears the immediate harmful effects the fruit might have on his body and consciousness. Lightness consumes him as his consciousness fades entirely, leaving him floating in a deep, starry void of nothingness. Blurred silhouettes of lush leaves emerge through a blinding white light as his senses slowly return to him. Waking up in an unfamiliar forest, he looks around in total confusion, while wondering exactly where he is. He sits up on the grass, observing the vast, sunlit woods that stretch out endlessly before his eyes. Realizing he hasn't been hospitalized, he notes that he is definitely no longer in his small city apartment. His eyes widen as a peculiar, digitized glow catches his attention right in front of his face. A transparent, floating status window appears out of thin air, shocking him with its sudden and impossible presence. The window displays his personal stats and lists his new occupation as a farmer within this unknown realm. Dismayed by the nonsensical data, he insists that he is a corporate slave and certainly not a farmer. Recalling the sickly mini tomato, he wonders if that bizarre fruit was actually a literal tool for world reincarnation. Silence falls over the forest as he stands still, trying to process the absurdity of his current situation. Determined to regain his senses, he concludes that this entire scenario must be some sort of elaborate illusion. He blames the tomato for causing vivid hallucinations and desperately searches for a logical explanation for the trees. Staring intensely at a nearby tree, he remains convinced that this is nothing more than a temporary dream. A massive thud echoes through the woods as Masato tests the reality of his new physical strength. Holding his head in disbelief, he stares at the broken tree, while questioning if this is truly reality. He wonders if the sudden display of power was merely a fluke or a bizarre, lucky coincidence. Determined to verify the truth, he sprints through the forest, striking every tree in his path repeatedly. Repeated impacts ring out across the clearing as he continues his frantic and destructive strength test. Looking at the devastation he caused, he finally admits that this world is not a mere hallucination. Lost in thought, he clutches his forehead while pondering what his next course of action should be. Suddenly, a minuscule, winged girl appears out of thin air, capturing his complete and utter attention. Masato recoils in shock, stumbling backward as the tiny creature floats effortlessly in front of his face. He observes the doll-sized girl with wide eyes, completely baffled by her sudden and magical appearance. A notification window confirms he has tamed a dryad, who happily chirps about a wonderful, lingering scent. The dryad introduces herself telepathically, while Masato gingerly holds the tiny spirit in his open palm. Confusion intensifies as another sudden change triggers a sharp reaction within his mind and spirit. His status screen reveals that his physical attributes have quadrupled, making the reincarnation feel undeniably real. He tries to explain to the clinging dryad that he simply ate a fruit rather than being a tree. Deep down, he still wants to believe the fruit was just a regular, sickly mini tomato from home. Dozens of identical dryads suddenly swarm him, drawn by the irresistible aroma of the reincarnation fruit he consumed. One friendly dryad smiles brightly while shaking his finger as a gesture of her sincere greeting. Notification windows flood his vision as he inadvertently tames every single dryad in the massive, excited group. His stats explode into incomprehensible numbers as he realizes he has tamed over 100 magical spirits. Masato sits among his dryads, calculating the massive growth of his parameters from taming so many spirits. He realizes his original values have been exponentially multiplied by his army of 122 dryads. With the mechanics understood, he decides to seek out civilization, while treating his status as a temporary illusion. Scrolling through his available abilities, his eyes land on the flight skill as a potential mode of transportation. However, he worries that his low mana might fail him mid-air, potentially stranding him in the upper atmosphere. Standing amidst the lush forest, he remains on high alert while surrounded by his tiny, hovering fairy companions. Suddenly, a colossal shadow looms over the group, and Masato looks up to see a massive creature overhead. Fear grips him as he watches the immense beast approach, sweat dripping down his face from the pressure. A powerful gust of wind knocks the dryads aside as the creature descends with overwhelming and terrifying force. Staring at the passing silhouette of the behemoth, he catches his breath and wonders what just swept past. A formidable dragon fully reveals itself, though Masato notices a distinct chip on one of its sharp claws. Despite the danger, he considers negotiating with the beast to secure a ride toward the nearest human settlement. The dragon opens its maw, gathering a swirling vortex of energy for a devastating, high-powered breath attack. Panicked, he frantically searches his skill list for a defensive option, settling on a move called Spellbreak. Knowing he must act before the energy fires, he readies himself to intercept the dragon's incoming magical blast. He successfully activates Spellbreak, nullifying the attack and leaving the legendary creature in a state of shock. One dryad translates the dragon's roar, revealing its pure disbelief that its primary weapon could be stopped. Realizing he can communicate through his companions, he asks them to interpret his words for a formal negotiation. He expresses genuine surprise at the sudden activation of the automatic language translation skill within his own mind. The dragon recoils in frustration, unable to fathom how its legendary breath was neutralized by such small beings. Masato realizes he can understand the dragon's speech as a meaningful language. He wonders if a direct conversation with the beast is actually possible. Taking a bold chance, he calls out to see if it hears him. The dragon is stunned, utterly shocked that a mere human speaks its tongue. Confirming the two-way translation works, Masato prepares to make a daring request. He asks the massive creature to take him flying through the sky. Relying on honesty over complex negotiation, he hopes for a simple favor. Deeply offended, the dragon sneers at the idea of serving a puny human. It retaliates fiercely, forcing Masato to activate Spellbreak once again. Masato appeals to its noble nature, asking it to help those in trouble. Realizing negotiation is failing, he scans his status screen to find a persuasive skill. He justifies using force as self-defense to prevent any trouble for nearby towns. Searching for the weakest fire spell, he selects one called Nano Fire. He worries that a larger spell might roast the dragon or the forest. Choosing the lowest power option first, he prepares to show his strength. With a calm voice, he unleashes the seemingly tiny Nano Fire spell. A cataclysmic pillar of light erupts instantly, shaking the very earth beneath them. Shocked by the massive explosion, he questions the spell's actual legendary name. The dragon stares in awe, terrified by the human's overwhelming magical might. Masato looks at his status window, confused by the spell's true destructive power. Masato notes that although the legendary skill exists, his insufficient mana confirms he didn't actually use it. He clarifies to the trembling dragon that the spell he cast was actually just nanofire. Despite his honest denial, the dragon adamantly accuses him of lying about the nature of his destructive power. The massive creature argues that he must have silently invoked the high-tier spell under the guise of chanting. Masato honestly admits he has absolutely no knowledge of such advanced or complex magical techniques. After a moment of silence, he begins to reconsider the situation from a different, more strategic perspective. He realizes that leveraging the dragon's fear of the legendary spell could be extremely advantageous for his plans. Terrified, the dragon reflects on the catastrophic danger the world would face if nanofire possessed such strength. Masato decides to retract his previous assessment, labeling the once proud dragon as surprisingly cowardly and easily intimidated. He concludes that his ordinary magic is simply being mistaken for a legendary force beyond all comprehension. Noting the dragon's sudden shift to overly polite speech, he finds the idea of further threats quite pitiful. Regardless of the dragon's fragile pride, Masato focuses on the practical benefit of having a flying mount. With a friendly smile, he finally asks the dragon if it will agree to take him along. The dragon eagerly accepts the offer, declaring its wholehearted delight in serving such a powerful new master. It boasts about its speed, while Masato kindly warns the beast not to overexert itself during the journey. Impressed by the creature's plane-like speed, he feels confident that he has found a truly reliable transportation. After mounting the massive beast, he gives the signal to depart as the dragon prepares for takeoff. Powerful wings flap with immense force as the dragon announces the start of their long-distance flight. Sudden acceleration throws Masato off balance, causing him to let out a startled cry of pure shock. Clinging desperately to the dragon's back, his extreme physical strength accidentally causes a scale to snap off. Holding the massive scale he accidentally ripped off, Masato looks down in utter shock at the damage. He plummets through the air. The dragon halts, watching. Having landed safely without feeling any pain, he tells the worried dragon that his status protected him. The dragon lowers its head in a deep bow, apologetically explaining that the scale was loosely attached. Worried about his tiny companions, he tells the dragon to stop bowing so the dryads won't be shaken off. He asks if losing a scale is truly alright, and the dragon reassures him it was meant to shed. As a sincere apology, the noble beast insists that Masato keep the valuable scale to sell for profit. He finds storage. Chanting the required command, he successfully stores the massive crimson scale within a magical spatial dimension. Once again securely mounted, he signals to his giant companion that they are finally ready for departure. They soar high. Gliding effortlessly across the horizon, the dragon carries him over an expansive and beautiful green landscape. Below, fields appear. Excitedly pointing downward, he notices a large, thriving farm located on the outskirts of a nearby town. He looks down at the dragon's back, realizing this world could provide a fresh, peaceful start. For the first time in years, he feels he might finally live the life he always desired. Soaring through the clouds, he asks the dragon if it can hover steadily in the sky directly above the discovered human settlement. To avoid causing a panic, he instructs the beast to land him quietly near the main city gate. Masato stands near the city walls, expressing his heartfelt gratitude to the dragon for saving him earlier. While the dragon offers future assistance, Masato realizes they have no reliable way to contact each other later. A dryad volunteers to stay with the dragon, prompting Masato to ask if remote communication is actually possible. He decides to send one dryad with the creature, while the others disembark to stay by his side. The group of magical spirits chirps in agreement, preparing to split up as they reach their final destination. Most of the dryads flutter down to join Masato, who thanks them for their constant and helpful support. He asks his remaining companion to relay a final goodbye to the dragon before they part ways permanently. The dragon bids him farewell, inviting Masato to call for help whenever the need inevitably arises again. With a massive flap of its wings, the legendary beast ascends into the bright and vast afternoon sky. Masato watches the shrinking silhouette of his new friend as it disappears far into the distant horizon. Feeling optimistic about his new life, he turns his attention toward the large walls of the human settlement. Walking through the tall grass, he approaches the town with his loyal group of hovering dryads trailing behind. Lush vegetation sways in the gentle breeze as he makes his way across the vibrant and peaceful landscape. High above, the lone dryad remaining on the dragon's back wonders if this is truly its home territory. The dragon turns its head, listening as the tiny spirit asks about something it wants to try out. It prepares to demonstrate a secret ability it observed from humans during its long and ancient life. A bright, magical light begins to envelop the dragon's massive form as it starts an incredible metamorphosis process. Sharp claws soften into human hands, and long, flowing white hair cascades down during the intense magical shift. The transformation nears completion, revealing a humanoid figure with striking horns and an elegant, flowing dress. A beautiful woman appears, proudly showing off her human transformation magic to the amazed and wide-eyed dryad. Relieved gatekeepers thank their lucky stars as the massive dragon finally departs from the city gates. Moments later, a confused guard asks Masato for a family crest to verify his status and identity. Upon hearing that only nobles possess crests, Masato awkwardly denies having any prestigious or aristocratic background. Meanwhile, the guards remain baffled because his high-class speech pattern suggests he is a powerful noble knight. He soon discovers his automatic translation skill is mistakenly converting polite manners into archaic noble dialogue. In an effort to sound common, he switches to a casual tone to clear up the guard's misunderstanding. Furthermore, he explains scaring the dragon away with a simple spell he calls the Nano Fire. This revelation causes the nearby guards to whisper in terror about his incredible and seemingly destructive power. Shifting the subject, Masato asks for the final steps required to legally enter the human town. Consequently, the guard produces a magical tracking ring used to maintain public order among all foreign visitors. Masato examines the device, noting its tracking function is remarkably similar to a modern GPS system. Curious, he asks the men if they can see the tiny winged dryads fluttering around him. Moving into the town, he admires the architecture and peaceful atmosphere of this vibrant fantasy world. Once inside the walls, he recalls the gatekeeper's advice and begins searching for the local guild building. Eventually, he finds the Badella branch of the Agriculture Guild and approaches the large stone entrance. Masato considers the irony of a former corporate slave stumbling upon an agricultural guild so quickly. A charming floral sign marks the entrance to the building where his new carefree journey will begin. Entering the lobby, he is welcomed by a cheerful receptionist who offers her professional assistance immediately. He asks if he is in the right place to obtain identification, while she explains the ring policy. The receptionist offers him a standard Agriculture Guild membership card, which Masato gladly accepts to start his life. Masato begins filling out the necessary paperwork for his membership at the local Agriculture Guild office. While waiting in the lobby, he is politely addressed by his full name while considering the optional fields. The receptionist soon presents his finished Agriculture Guild membership card, officially marking his start in this new world. They discuss his unusual name order, leading Masato to explain it stems from a distant and different cultural region. She beams at him warmly, suggesting a polite honorific that makes the former corporate slave feel quite flustered. Although embarrassed by the attention, he accepts the title to avoid any further noble-related misunderstandings in town. He learns the registration fee costs 1,000 ether, which must be paid before removing his magical tracking ring. Lacking local currency, he presents the dragon scale and inquires about where such valuable items are typically sold. The stunned receptionist directs him to the nearby Adventurer Guild, which handles transactions for rare monster materials. She mentions that a typical household needs 30,000 ether monthly, helping Masato understand the local cost of living. Realizing the exchange rate is quite simple to calculate, he heads toward the Adventurer Guild with his valuable asset. Inside the guild, staff begin measuring the dragonium levels to determine the scale's true rank and market value. An expert shouts in disbelief upon discovering the incredible quality, identifying it as a rare ancient dragon scale. Masato winces internally at the dragon's flashy title, remembering the eccentric Chunibyu creature he met earlier. He innocently asks if the measurement is too little, only for the staff to react with absolute, wide-eyed shock. The eye-patched official roars that the value is far too high, while his assistant giggles at the absurdity. They appraise the single scale at over 8 million ether, a massive fortune that leaves everyone in the room stunned. After finishing at the Adventurer Guild, Masato returns to his original destination with more than enough funds now. He meets with the receptionist again to settle his fees and discuss purchasing his first plot of choice farmland. She confirms their services while looking slightly overwhelmed by the sudden arrival of such a wealthy new farmer. The receptionist details land prices, explaining that renting for 54,000 ether annually is a much more common start. Masato finds the rental option quite tempting, as it allows him to experiment in a much larger field. He officially decides to rent 1 hectare of land and prepares to select a specific area for his farm. They browse through a catalog of available plots, with the receptionist suggesting locations based on the current growing season. Masato decides to start with simple crops like tomatoes and soybeans, drawing from his childhood experiences in elementary school. Handing over a large sum, he pays 220,000 ether to finalize his land and registration. After settling the payment, he thanks the receptionist for her help, while stacks of coins pile up on the counter. The receptionist expresses concern about him managing such a large area alone, noting his status as a lone wanderer. He reassuringly mentions having special connections, glancing at the tiny dryads who remain invisible to everyone else. Sunlight fades over the quiet town as the day's busy administrative tasks finally draw to a close. By evening, Masato has settled into his new life, having successfully rented a local apartment to call home. Looking out his window at the twilight sky, he mentally prepares to begin his true farming journey tomorrow morning. He marvels at how quickly he achieved his long-awaited dream life in just half a single day. Time passes quickly as night turns into a bright and clear morning sky filled with fluffy white clouds. The next morning, Masato stands in the quiet outskirts of town, ready to meet with his powerful draconic ally. He realizes that the open outskirts provide the perfect secluded spot to call the massive dragon without causing panic. Standing in the open field, he announces his arrival and prepares to reunite with his giant flying companion. To help him spot his friend, he accesses his status window and activates the enhanced vision magic skill. The crimson dragon suddenly descends from the sky, offering a friendly morning greeting as it lands near its master. It praises the invisibility magic activated through the dryads, allowing a legendary beast to move through the world unseen. After arriving unseen, Masato thanks the dragon for using its invisibility magic to reach the outskirts discreetly. He expresses relief that the plan worked perfectly, and asks if he can mount the beast again. Activating the illumination skill, he points toward the ground to demarcate the exact boundaries of his new farmland. Following his instructions, the dragon prepares to mix the soil and apply the special material Masato requested earlier. Masato observes with keen interest as the dragon utilizes its unique version of storage magic to retrieve resources. The massive creature flies across the field, expertly sprinkling a fine layer of material over the dark earth. He explains that the dragon is using wood ash to adjust the soil's acidity for the upcoming planting. A tiny dryad cheers about the high quality of the ash, while Masato wonders about its true meaning. She explains that dragon dung is packed with vital nutrients that ensure all crops will grow quite vigorously. Surprised by this unexpected biological benefit, he watches the beast finish its task under the bright morning sun. Next, Masato suggests making furrows to organize the field, while the dragon flexes its sharp, massive claws. The dragon confidently accepts the digging task, promising to plow the rows exactly like waves in human fields. It carefully drags its sharp claws through the dirt, plowing the ground with incredible and steady draconic power. Staring in disbelief, Masato notes that the resulting furrows are absolutely perfect and ready for immediate planting. He marvels at the dragon's high dexterity, allowing such a massive body to perform incredibly precise agricultural tasks. A peaceful smile crosses his face as he reflects on his good fortune in meeting such helpful companions. Taking a well-deserved break, he decides to settle down and enjoy an even number of snacks for lunch. The dragon lands and suggests they finally introduce themselves properly, while Masato enjoys his simple midday meal. Masato reveals that he learned the dragon's true identity earlier when he first used his magical storage skill. The dragon reacts with visible surprise when Masato correctly identifies it as the legendary and noble Flaming Crimson Dragon. The dragon requests a better name, finding the title Flaming Crimson Dragon too embarrassing to use. Masato sighs, wondering why she bothered introducing herself if she immediately wanted a completely different name. He jokingly suggests Doraemon-themed names, but the dragon insists on something cute since she is female. Realizing Iman is indeed too masculine, Masato consults his mental list to find a fitting female name. After a brief moment of silent contemplation, he settles on a beautiful name for his giant companion. Standing in the vast field, Masato suggests the name Himari to the waiting and curious dragon. He offers a warm smile, feeling confident that this new name perfectly suits her gentle spirit. Himari looks surprised, her eyes widening as she processes the simple yet charming name she was given. Finding the name unique and lovely, she then politely asks for Masato's own name in return. He introduces himself as Shindo Masato, kindly giving her permission to address him by his first name. The dragon happily accepts his introduction, chirping back his name with a new sense of friendly familiarity. Turning his focus back to the work, Masato decides it is finally time to sow the seeds. He pauses, remembering his infinite dexterity stat, and wondering how it might enhance his manual labor today. An idea strikes him to simply toss the seeds casually, hoping they land precisely in the furrows. With a swift motion, he flings a handful of seeds into the air across the prepared soil. Incredibly, the seeds land perfectly as the dryads hold up scorecards to celebrate his flawless technique. Himari stares in disbelief at the trajectory, noting every seed is buried exactly 2 centimeters deep. He apologizes for his mysterious abilities before announcing that the only task left is watering the field. The dryads excitedly volunteer for the job, promising to use their magic to make it rain immediately. A tiny dryad focuses her power, ready to provide the necessary hydration for the newly planted crops. The dryads summon a dense, magical rain cloud to hydrate the newly planted seeds. Masato stares up at the suspiciously perfect weather, wondering if it looks too artificial for onlookers. Subsequently, he accesses his menu to locate the appraisal skill for identifying mysterious phenomena around him. The appraisal window describes the blessing rain cloud of the dryad as a miraculous plant-enhancing growth tool. Furthermore, he marvels at the immense power of his companions and their ability to nurture crops. Having completed the day's work, he thanks Himari and the dryads before sending them home. Watching the dragon fly away, he notes that only the harvest remains for his flourishing fields. Walking through the quiet town with a loaf of bread, he feels satisfied with his new life. Despite his success, he admits there is still one lingering issue, causing him a great deal of dissatisfaction. Back in his room, he collapses onto his bed, desperately craving the taste of authentic Japanese food. He laments the lack of familiar ingredients like soy sauce, miso, and rice in the local grocery stores. Lying awake, he considers the possibility of producing his own traditional condiments if he grows soybeans. Suddenly, he sits up with a start as a brilliant culinary inspiration strikes his tired mind. His eyes sparkle with excitement as he recalls a specific dish that might satisfy his intense cravings. Then, a fierce, wild boar charges through the forest with incredible and terrifying speed. With a single swift kick, Masato easily defeats the beast as the 3rd episode officially begins. Standing over the fallen animal, he tells Himari about gathering wild vegetables in the recommended mountains. He envisions a steaming bowl of chawanmushi, which requires specific forest ingredients to prepare properly. Consequently, he asks Himari to provide him with fast transport to the high mountain ranges. Finally, he uses his storage magic on the defeated boar, considering it as a potential ingredient for his meal. Masato spots something familiar, nestled among the trees of the vast mountain forest. He discovers wild mitsuba and hirataki mushrooms, essential ingredients for his planned savory custard. Feeling optimistic about his culinary quest, he hears a dryad calling out to him nearby. The tiny spirit excitedly leads him toward what she claims are exceptionally delicious mushrooms. However, Masato immediately identifies the vibrant growth as a notoriously toxic fly agaric mushroom. Stunned by the dryad's dangerous suggestion, he holds his head in total disbelief and silence. He patiently explains that the fungus is a famous poison, despite its appealing and bright appearance. Himari insists that his high vitality could handle the poison, emphasizing its intense and savory flavor. Masato remains speechless as the powerful dragon casually suggests consuming the highly dangerous forest vegetation. Using his appraisal skill, he learns that the mushroom possesses 10 times more umami than glutamate. Tempted by the promise of ultimate flavor, he nervously swallows while considering the risks involved. He finally decides to gather the mushrooms, much to the delight of his enthusiastic magical companions. Soon after, another dryad chirps excitedly, urging him to follow her toward another interesting find. They discover a shirasu citrus fruit, which is prized for its incredibly refreshing and sharp aroma. Holding the citrus, Masato realizes he now has every specific ingredient required for his special dish. He informs Himari of his intent to head back to the human settlement to begin cooking. The dragon agrees with his plan, expressing her own eager desire to taste the finished culinary creation. As Himari flies back toward the town, terrified citizens flee from the sight of the approaching beast. Safely back home, Masato puts on an apron and prepares to finally start his long-awaited cooking session. He arranges the gathered wild boar meat, eggs, and forest vegetables on his clean kitchen counter. Masato begins his culinary endeavor, focusing on the specialized process of making a traditional chawanmushi dish. First, he carefully beats the eggs while preparing a specific amount of savory dashi broth. Lacking traditional ingredients, he utilizes his advanced alchemy skill to extract rich seasoning from wild boar parts. He meticulously combines the golden egg mixture with the freshly made dashi for a perfectly smooth consistency. To ensure a flawless texture, he gently pops any lingering air bubbles on the surface with a spoon. Next, he places the harvested mushrooms and wild boar meat into the waiting ceramic cups. He pours the liquid mixture over the ingredients, filling each cup until they are almost reaching the brim. Since no steamer is available, he improvises by placing the cups into a water-filled frying pan instead. Furthermore, he cleverly deploys barrier magic as a functional substitute for non-existent aluminum foil to cover the cups. After 10 minutes, a tiny dryad assists as he checks for transparency to ensure the custard is set. To finish the presentation, he garnishes the dish with a slice of citrus and fresh mitsuba leaves. Flanked by his tiny companions, he proudly admires the successful completion of his homemade gourmet meal. Stepping out onto his balcony, he calls up to the sky to inform Himari that dinner is ready. The massive dragon circles overhead, questioning how she could possibly consume such a tiny, delicate dish. Masato looks at the small tray, realizing the significant size difference presents a major challenge for a dragon. Sensing a potential solution, he asks his powerful companion to wait just a single moment longer. Suddenly, a blinding flash of white light erupts as the legendary beast begins a shocking magical transformation. Massive, sharp, draconic claws begin to shift and shrink as the creature sheds its giant physical form. In the midst of the glowing aura, a slender human hand reaches out to touch the air. Finally, a stunningly beautiful woman descends from the light to join Masato for their long-awaited gourmet feast. Masato gazes in total astonishment as his dragon companion reveals a stunningly beautiful human form. Himari proudly explains that this is her human transformation magic, a skill she has carefully maintained. Realizing this form makes sharing a proper meal much easier. Masato welcomes the surprising development. The pair relocates to a table on the balcony, enjoying the peaceful evening air together. Steaming cups of chawanmushi sit ready, releasing a savory aroma that makes their mouths water. Clapping their hands in gratitude, they officially begin their first authentic gourmet feast in this world. Himari immediately prepares to devour her portion, clearly captivated by the novelty of the dish. However, Masato interjects before she takes a bite to ensure she experiences the flavors correctly. He instructs her to squeeze fresh citrus over the custard to perfectly balance the rich, savory notes. Lifting a delicate spoonful, they finally sample the results of Masato's meticulous and magical cooking. The incredible quality leaves them both speechless as they exclaim in unison how delicious it tastes. Masato specifically praises the satisfying crunch of the mitsuba and the rich texture of the mountain mushrooms. Closing her eyes in bliss, Himari savors the exceptionally smooth and velvety sensation on her tongue. Overcome with emotion, Masato finally finds the authentic Japanese flavor he has been desperately seeking. Moving on, he turns his attention to the cup containing the notoriously toxic fly agaric mushroom. Bracing himself for the potential side effects, he takes a tentative bite of the dangerous delicacy. An electric shock of pure flavor jolts through his system as the intense umami hits his palate. The taste is so overwhelmingly powerful that he finally understands why experts risk poisoning for it. While using detox magic to stay safe, he appreciates how world-breaking skills enable such gourmet experiences. Ultimately, he watches Himari enjoy the toxic meal without worry, noting her immunity to the natural poisons. Masato and Himari enjoy their meal together on the balcony, while sharing a peaceful moment. Himari thanks him profusely for the exquisite dish as they finish every last bite of the custard. Seeing her enthusiasm, Masato asks if she wants more, receiving a very loud and energetic confirmation. She requests that he prepare extra next time and keep it fresh within his magical storage space. Later, Himari takes flight in her dragon form, while Masato watches her silhouette against the sky. He reflects on how a little ingenuity can make life in this new world even more enjoyable. The following day arrives, marking a shift in focus after their successful and delicious culinary experiment. Masato visits a local gardening supplies store to browse for tools needed for his expanding farm. Having finished his primary chores, he spends his free time window shopping for various agricultural equipment. He notes the high price of wooden stakes, realizing that outfitting a large field will be costly. Looking at the bundles, he calculates the total expense required for a farm of his significant size. Consequently, he considers the possibility of crafting the necessary materials himself to save his hard-earned money. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out to him, interrupting his thoughts about the various shop displays. Carol from the Agriculture Guild greets him with a warm smile, surprised to see him there today. They exchange pleasantries as Masato explains his interest in maintaining a small home garden for himself. She reveals that today is her day off, and she coincidentally came to do some personal shopping. Eager to help a customer succeed, Carol offers to give him a guided tour of the shop. Masato marvels at the unexpected encounters, concluding that this fantasy world is truly full of surprises. She leads him toward the specialized equipment, asking for his opinion on various magical farming implements. They examine advanced magical tools like seed invasion barriers and convenient wide-range sprinkler systems. Breaking the news to Carol, Masato admits that the dryads' miraculous rain of blessings is quite sufficient. Carol freezes in place, her wide-eyed expression conveying absolute and utter shock at his casual revelation. Calmly, Masato explains that these magical spirits remain completely invisible to any regular person in this city. Carol stares off into the distance, trying to comprehend the incredible advantages Masato naturally possesses. Shifting his attention, he notices a row of bottles containing what appears to be modern liquid fertilizer. Staring at the containers, he wonders how such advanced agricultural technology could possibly exist in this realm. He realizes that the city's current level of development shouldn't have modern industrial chemical processes. Holding a bottle, he asks how it is produced, while Carol watches him with a curious expression. Carol casually reveals that liquid fertilizer isn't manufactured, but is actually found as loot inside local dungeons. Masato recoils in disbelief, his mind reeling at the bizarre connection between dangerous dungeons and farming. Moving along the shelves, Carol points out specialized growth enhancers designed to significantly shorten harvest times. A single can of growth promoter costs 5,000 ether and speeds up crop development by 5 days. Masato falls into a thoughtful silence, processing the steep price and relatively modest effects of the potion. When Carol asks what is wrong, he honestly admits he was hoping for an instant harvest solution. He questions if such an expensive item is truly worthwhile for only a meager 5-day gain. They discuss the limited cost-effectiveness of the item, given its high price and specific application, Carol looks away, confirming that no magical item in the shop offers an immediate, instant harvest. She explains that only the most prosperous farmers can afford to use these enhancers to make profit. However, she suggests that a powerful individual like him might have other options for acquiring materials. She proposes that he could simply venture into the dungeons and gather the fertilizer himself. Masato enters the dark, arched corridors of the dungeon, questioning if he is ready for the challenge. He starts the 4th chapter of his journey, wondering about the feasibility of modifying the dangerous dungeon environment. Preparing his blade with a magic circle, he recalls the goal of finding growth fertilizer as loot. Noting his low mana points, he decides to focus purely on physical attacks to conserve his energy. He ponders how deep he must descend before the elusive growth promoter finally begins to drop from enemies. Himari arrives in her human form, offering her assistance to ensure his safety during the difficult dungeon crawl. As they walk together, low-level monsters tremble and flee in terror from the dragon's overwhelming hidden presence. Realizing the floor is too easy, Masato checks his status and plans to descend to much deeper levels. He accesses his advanced construction skill, following the mental prompt to imagine the specific structure he desires. Considering the long walk ahead, he envisions a modern elevator as a convenient way to navigate the floors. Confirming the design, he officially begins the magical construction process as the surrounding dungeon walls start to rumble. Violent tremors shake the stone corridors, causing a panicked Himari to wonder what on earth is currently happening. Intense light erupts from the floor as a complex mechanical structure begins to manifest through pure magical power. A familiar bell rings as the doors of a fully functional modern elevator slide open before them. Proudly presenting his work, Masato reveals the results of his special grade construction art to his stunned companion. Himari stares in absolute disbelief, her mind racing as she processes the impossible sight of human machinery. She shouts in protest, baffled by how easily he can rewrite the very structure of the ancient dungeon. They descend to the 80th floor, where a colossal, dark bear monster waits to challenge their sudden arrival. Observing the massive beast, Masato curiously asks Himari if she considers this powerful creature a real threat. Himari scoffs with a smug smile, confident that the bear stands absolutely no chance against her true power. Masato unleashes a powerful kick, instantly defeating the massive bear monster with his overwhelming physical strength. As the creature vanishes into sparkles, a rare loot drop in the form of a card appears. Himari watches in pure amazement as the mysterious item manifests right in front of their eyes. Consequently, Masato explains that he simply exploited the creature's weak point before picking up the reward. He turns the card over to examine its details, discovering it features an illustration of a wyvern. The description reveals it is a wyvern tour card, providing rapid transportation and convenient storage capabilities. Realizing that specific monsters drop set items, Masato decides they must seek out different dungeon enemies. Suddenly, a colossal crocodile emerges from the darkness, posing a new threat to the duo's progress. Himari gasps in shock as the scaly behemoth lumbers forward to challenge their presence in the floor. With blinding speed, Masato strikes down the crocodile, while a startled Himari complains about his excessive haste. The second reward is the ultimate vinyl house, a magical tool that creates the perfect environment for any plant. Masato looks impressed by the versatile growing tool, while Himari remains overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. He asks if this new item might finally be what they were looking for all along. Hopeful yet cautious, Himari wonders if they can use it to cultivate the legendary Alhilda mushroom. This specific fungus is the essential ingredient for a cure against the terrifying and incurable white magic disease. Himari solemnly reveals that her mother suffers from the ailment, having only 300 years left to live. She beams with newfound hope, realizing that growing the mushrooms could finally save her mother's life. Moved by her story, Masato resolves to grow the medicine as quickly as humanly possible. A tiny dryad chimes in, noting that while spores are everywhere, they are incredibly difficult to cultivate successfully. Masato compares the spores to botulinum bacteria, reflecting on the extreme toxicity and danger associated with such organisms. Masato and Himari continue their descent, eventually discovering a mysterious treasure chest resting atop a small brick platform. In a flash, the chest reveals its true form as a mimic, snapping its jagged teeth and lashing a long tongue. A fierce clash of steel erupts as Masato immediately draws his sword to counter the surprise monster attack. With a decisive strike, he cleaves through the mimic, causing a unique decorative card to drop from its remains. This rare reward is identified as a dubbing card, which allows him to duplicate any item found within dungeons. They discuss their progress and realize that the desired growth enhancers are likely hidden on much deeper dungeon floors. Returning to the magical elevator, Masato presses the button for the 81st floor to seek out more powerful foes. As the doors open, a massive scaled serpent lunges from the darkness to challenge their arrival in the corridor. The giant snake whips its body around, its tail creating powerful gusts as it maneuvers through the narrow space. Masato delivers a swift finishing blow, and a high-grade can of growth promoter falls as the beast dissipates. He is stunned by the sudden drop, realizing that this might be the very item they have been hunting for. Himari joins him to inspect the label, both of them wearing expressions of absolute and utter shock and disbelief. The item is an advanced one, HA3M Growth Enhancer, capable of accelerating plant development by 3 entire months per application. Comparing it to the shop's version, Masato notes that dungeon loot is significantly more efficient for their farming needs. Without warning, a sharp sound echoes through the stone hall, catching their attention and putting them back on high alert. Himari points toward the shadows on the ceiling, warning Masato that another dangerous predator is lurking directly above them. A shimmering glass lizard clings to the overhead masonry, its transparent body reflecting the faint light of the dungeon. They observe the creature from below, while Himari explains its traits, noting how different it is from previous monsters. She warns that the lizard is extremely dangerous due to its explosive molting ability, which can shred nearby targets. Masato considers a preemptive strike, though he worries about whether his sword can actually cut through a glass body. The glass lizard lunges forward, its transparent jaws snapping as it prepares to strike the intruders. Leaping high into the air, Masato raises his sword to deliver a decisive blow against the crystalline predator. A deafening shatter echoes through the dungeon as the lizard's body is reduced to countless glittering fragments. The creature is successfully defeated, leaving behind a glowing treasure card that Masato quickly retrieves from the ground. Himari watches with a smug expression, noting that everything about Masato, including his sharp blade, is quite strange. He examines the new loot, a Cinderella Clinic card capable of transforming the wearer into a peerless beauty. Finding the item practically useless for his current farming goals, Masato decides it is time to leave. Himari asks why they aren't exploring further, but Masato clarifies he has no intention of becoming a professional adventurer. Parting ways for now, Himari waves a cheerful goodbye as Masato heads back toward the human city. The sun shines brightly over the peaceful buildings of the town as Masato returns to settle his affairs. Before heading back to his fields, he stops at the guild to sell the unnecessary glass slipper card. He approaches the familiar emblem of the local adventure guild, hoping for another quick and profitable transaction. The receptionist immediately recognizes him as the individual who previously brought in the legendary ancient dragon scale. She carefully inspects the new card, sensing that it might be another incredibly rare and valuable legendary artifact. Taking the item to the back office, she prepares to conduct a formal and thorough appraisal of its power. Suddenly, the doors fly open as the panicked receptionist rushes back out to confront Masato about his discovery. She screams that this item is a perfect upgrade that could influence the relationships of high-ranking royalty. When asked where he found such a thing, Masato nervously admits he simply reached the 81st floor. Skeptical of his claim, she uses a lie detector which remains silent, proving he is telling the absolute truth. The eye-patched official bursts from his office in shock, unable to believe someone reached the 81st floor alone. The eye-patched official confronts Masato about the mysterious structures reported deep within the dangerous dungeon corridors. Masato casually explains that he built an elevator because moving between 81 floors was becoming too troublesome, Both guild employees stare in absolute wordless shock at the casual admission of altering the dungeon's ancient geometry. Sensing their concern, he nervously offers to erase the structure if his convenient modifications have caused any issues. Instead, the official proposes opening it to the public for a massive annual royalty of 3 million ether. Masato agrees to the deal, requesting that all future payments be handled through his account at the Agriculture Guild. Walking away, he marvels at his sudden financial windfall while planning to purchase even more farming supplies soon. Curiosity gets the better of him as he opens his status window to check his current power levels. His attributes have reached astronomical scientific notation levels, bolstered by the presence of over 100 tamed dryads. He notes that his mana capacity has grown enough to make magical travel to his distant fields effortless. Arriving at his plot of land, he feels relieved that he can now focus entirely on his agricultural goals. Holding the high-grade growth enhancer, he ponders the most efficient way to distribute the concentrated liquid across his field. A helpful dryad chirps an idea, explaining that they can mix the potion into their magical rain clouds for him. Floating rings appear within the white cloud, acting as specialized intake ports for the legendary dungeon growth promoter. He carefully pours the liquid into the portal, watching it disappear into the swirling mist of the magical cloud. The clouds immediately turn dark and heavy, releasing a shimmering rain infused with the power of the enhancer. A torrential downpour soaks the earth, delivering the vital magical nutrients directly to the seeds buried below. Masato watches in total disbelief as the plants begin to grow at the speed of a fast-forwarded video. Within seconds, the tiny sprouts have transformed into vibrant, full-grown plants that tower over the dark, rich soil. To prevent the top-heavy plants from collapsing, he quickly activates gravity manipulation to stabilize the entire field. Masato marvels at the brilliant glowing harvest standing before him as the field reaches full maturity. He observes that the tomatoes are perfectly ripe and the soybeans are ready for immediate collection. Encouraging his tiny companions, he excitedly announces the start of their first major agricultural harvest. Consequently, the energetic dryads swarm the field, working together to pluck the oversized and vibrant vegetables. A peaceful sky hangs over the thriving farmland, while the busy labor of harvesting continues apace. With his recent financial success, Masato decides to invest in support stakes for the remaining heavy plants. He instructs the dryads to carefully prop up each individual stem to prevent them from collapsing. The magical spirits cheer enthusiastically, while taking up the heavy wooden poles to assist his efforts. Working in pairs, the tiny fairies maneuver the long stakes into position around the burgeoning crop. Later, Masato checks his status while holding a sample of the exceptionally high-quality produce. He notes that the powerful growth enhancer requires a 4-day cooldown before it can be reused. Bidding farewell for now, he tells the dryads he will return once the required time has passed. 4 days eventually slip by, marking the official end of the mandatory cooldown period for his magic. Having finished the grueling task, Masato and his dryads celebrate harvesting every single plant in sight. Back in the city, he prepares to evaluate the true worth of his miraculous agricultural output. The final tally reveals a staggering yield of 29 tons of tomatoes and nearly a ton of soybeans. Sitting comfortably in his room, he activates his appraisal skill to examine the unusual black soybeans. Suddenly, his eyes widen in pure shock as the true properties of the legendary crop are revealed. These black soybeans of the divine eye grant incredible vision and provide the permanent telescope skill. A blinding flash of insight consumes his mind as he processes the legendary potential of his farming. Masato stares in utter shock at his appraisal results, wondering about the true nature of his bizarre crops. Consequently, the story enters a new chapter titled Forbidden Crops, as he continues his domestic life in another world. Back in his room, he takes a hesitant bite of a tomato and immediately reacts with pure, blissful delight. He exclaims that the flavor is top-notch, while finding it impossible to stop eating the incredibly delicious, homegrown fruit. Considering the massive tonnage, he decides to store the majority in his magical box, while keeping a portion for himself. Meanwhile, the bright afternoon sun shines over the city streets as Masato heads out to conduct important guild business. A brief recap highlights his journey from a worn-out office worker to a savior of dragons with abnormal vegetables. Inside the warehouse, Carol stands paralyzed with shock as Masato presents his staggering harvest of tomatoes and black beans. She questions how a complete beginner achieved such impossible results in 2 weeks, while Masato humbly credits her advice. To explain his success, he produces the high-grade growth accelerator he looted from the depths of the local dungeon. Carol's eyes nearly pop out as she reads the label promising 3 months of accelerated growth in one application. Overwhelmed by the sheer absurdity of his luck, she clutches her head while Masato innocently asks what is wrong. Shifting focus, Masato suggests they begin the arduous task of sorting the massive pile of fresh tomatoes into crates. Carol promptly activates her sorting telekinesis magic, a specialized skill used for managing large quantities of agricultural produce efficiently. A single, perfect tomato rises into the air, caught within the glowing aura of her precise and handy magical ability. Thousands of vegetables float through the warehouse, being categorized by grade and deposited into their respective wooden storage bins. Examining the results, Carol is astounded to find 0 diseases or imperfections among the entire 29-ton tomato harvest. Realizing he has an expert nearby, Masato interrupts her thoughts to ask a few pressing questions about the market. He curiously inquires if tomatoes for eternal youth and eyesight-improving beans are common items found in local market stalls. Carol freezes in place, her blank expression suggesting that Masato has once again said something completely and utterly preposterous. Carol collapses from the sheer shock, while Masato calls out her name in great concern. Feeling dizzy and overwhelmed, she decides to call for a professional appraiser to handle the impossible situation. Masato waits alone in the warehouse, while Carol rushes to fetch the local guild's top expert. An elderly master appraiser arrives on the scene, immediately asking if these are indeed legendary vegetables. The old man reaches out his hand to touch the impossibly vibrant and glowing tomato harvest. He trembles with visible shock, declaring that calling these items legendary might be a massive understatement. The appraiser aggressively grabs Masato, demanding to know how he cultivated such miracles from ordinary seeds. Carol quickly intervenes, confirming that she personally sold Masato the standard seeds used for this harvest. The old man falls into a thoughtful silence, carefully considering the impossible nature of the situation. He eventually concludes that only a legendary fairy like a dryad could provide such overwhelming magical power. A tiny, invisible dryad reacts with wide-eyed surprise to the elderly man's surprisingly accurate and sharp deduction. They share a laugh about the absurdity of dryads being human allies instead of mere fairy tales. Masato smiles nervously, noting how local legends view his small and helpful group of garden companions. He realizes that the dryad's blessing rain cloud had a much more profound effect than he initially anticipated. The magical water supercharged his plants, enhancing their natural nutrients while granting them legendary medicinal properties. Carol warns him that such a valuable crop requires the cooperation of an exclusive merchant for safety. She explains that these items possess forbidden life-extending effects and must never enter the general market circulation. Furthermore, she discusses the vital necessity of protecting Masato's identity from potential threats through specialized distribution. Masato realizes that his involvement with such crops might attract the attention of many dangerous and unsavory individuals. Carol confirms that the exclusive merchant system will go to great lengths to safeguard his personal information. Masato asks his loyal dryad companions to keep a sharp eye out for any suspicious individuals near his lodgings. The elderly appraiser promises to report the findings to the guildmaster and arrange a highly trustworthy exclusive merchant. Recognizing the need for discretion, they seek out a specialized partner who possesses the utmost trust within the guild. As the meeting concludes, the group prepares for the arrival of the candidate who will manage these legendary crops. Carol excitedly introduces a man named Cole, claiming he is the perfect candidate to handle Masato's extraordinary produce. A mysterious, hooded figure appears, identified as an exclusive, traveling merchant with unique skills vital for this dangerous task. Cole introduces himself and reveals he possesses the rare mystification skill, ensuring his safe passage and absolute delivery reliability. Carol explains that this power allows him to transform into mist and move freely through the air like the wind. She recounts Cole's tragic past, involving a hidden sister and a daring escape from a criminal organization using his powers. Deeply moved by the intense story, Masato considers how he can support Cole's efforts beyond their professional business arrangement. He recalls the Wyvern card he obtained earlier, realizing its incredible value to a traveling distributor in this world. Masato offers the rare transportation card to Cole as a token of friendship to assist in his hazardous merchant journeys. Cole gazes at the legendary relic in complete disbelief, his eye widening as he processes the magnitude of the gift. The entire group reacts with total shock, learning that only 5 of these ancient civilization relics exist in the world. They discuss the card's prestige, noting that wyverns are top-tier transport typically reserved only for dire national emergencies. Carol warns that using such a relic would make Masato famous enough to be included in future historical textbooks. Following the exchange of formal contracts, they bid farewell to Cole as he prepares to depart with the harvest. To ensure the merchant's continued safety, Masato assigns one invisible dryad to accompany him on his long and dangerous travels. The profit distribution is finalized with Masato receiving the lion's share, reflecting the immense value and risk involved. Returning to the guild counter, Masato asks Carol if he can purchase a large supply of wheat seeds next. Carol questions Masato's sanity for requesting wheat seeds at such an unusual and incorrect time of year. Unfazed, Masato reflects on using growth stimulants and looks forward to satisfying his sudden craving for tempura. He informs Himari about his plan to clear the fields before attempting to grow the legendary medicinal mushrooms. Standing before the remains of his previous harvest, he observes the withered stalks that still occupy the land. A cheerful dryad interrupts his thoughts, promising that a special magical rain can easily resolve his gardening problem. The dryads summon a powerful downpour over the field to begin the specialized process of cleaning the soil. Masato watches in total horror as the rain causes the remaining plants to melt into a dark liquid. An appraisal window explains that the dryad's restorative rain cloud decomposes plant matter to enrich the Earth's soil. He is deeply impressed by this natural composting method, while the dryads celebrate their successful and helpful work. Himari returns to find the fields completely cleared and ready for the next phase of their agricultural project. With the land prepared, Masato asks Himari if he should deploy the magical greenhouse right away. He holds the miniature ultimate vinyl house tool, feeling the weight of the high-tier dungeon loot in his hand. Activating the device, a complex magical circle glows brightly as the structure begins its rapid physical manifestation. A massive, modern greenhouse appears instantly in the middle of the field, shocking the pair with its size. Excited to start their next crop, Masato and his companions decide to enter the new facility immediately. Inside the structure, a tiny dryad points toward a seemingly ordinary white stone containing the elusive mushroom spores. Himari leans in close, confirming to a skeptical Masato that the legendary spores are indeed attached to the rock. Curious about the microscopic details, Masato decides to utilize his specialized microscope skill to verify the finding. Through the magical lens, he observes the unique rod-shaped structures of the legendary and potentially life-saving fungal spores. A detailed notification confirms the spores' resilience and their ability to germinate under the greenhouse's perfect growing conditions. Masato confirms with Himari that they only need to cultivate these spores to proceed. Subsequently, he designates the legendary mushroom spores as the primary target for his specialized cultivation. Responding to the system's prompt, he focuses his intent on the spore-covered rock sitting before him. Meanwhile, the atmosphere inside the magical greenhouse begins to shift into a dark and oppressive state. Realizing the extreme conditions required for Alhilda mushrooms, Masato prepares to bravely enter the facility. Himari expresses full confidence in his durability, while he remains skeptical of the source of her assurance. Deciding to test the environment safely first, Masato prepares to throw a sturdy metal drum inside. With a powerful toss, he flings the heavy object through the open door to observe the reaction. The drum bounces across the floor for a few seconds before a sudden crushing pressure strikes it. To their absolute horror, the solid metal is flattened instantly, as if hit by a giant hammer. The wreckage begins to melt in the extreme heat, proving the environment is completely lethal to humans. Faced with such a terrifying prospect, Masato and Himari discuss the specific measures needed for his survival. He determines that activating auto-cure and holding his breath are essential for surviving the toxic greenhouse gas. Furthermore, he considers utilizing the HP lock skill as a necessary final layer of magical insurance. Bracing himself for the painful ordeal, Masato slowly approaches the shimmering threshold of the lethal structure. Himari watches his every movement with a worried expression, urging him to be extremely careful with each step. Taking a deep and final breath, he finally crosses the boundary and enters the forbidden cultivation zone. An intense wave of pain and crushing pressure immediately hits his entire body upon entering the facility. He finds himself completely surrounded by a lethal gas designed to destroy anything within its reach. Miraculously, his enhanced attributes allow him to endure the torture as he questions what saved his life. Masato maneuvers through the hostile greenhouse, remaining vigilant despite the crushing magical pressure weighing down on him. He feels the physical strain intensifying, realizing he must locate the elusive mushroom spores before his breath fails. Utilizing his advanced microscope skill, he finally spots the tiny spores clinging to a small, unassuming rock. Kneeling before his target, he prepares to administer the high-grade growth stimulant to initiate the cultivation process. A detailed status window confirms that these rare spores will eventually transform into a legendary medicinal cure. Just as he prepares to apply the 3-month growth cycle, a sudden realization halts his planned actions. Scanning the dark ground, he notices additional spores naturally occurring throughout the soil of the magical facility. Deciding to maximize his harvest, he meticulously applies the stimulant to the various spores found in the earth. Stepping back outside, Masato stretches in the fresh air, while a relieved Himari celebrates his safe return. He inquires about the natural growth cycle, wondering how long the mushrooms typically take to reach full maturity. Himari ponders for a moment before revealing that the process normally requires over a year of development. Quickly performing the mental math, Masato calculates that his powerful stimulant reduces the wait to 16 days. He breaks the news of the accelerated harvest to a stunned Himari, who can hardly believe the speed. With a confident smile, he looks forward to healing her mother much sooner than they previously anticipated. Overjoyed by the prospect of saving her family, Himari beams with absolute happiness and shimmering excitement. They discuss the next steps, with Himari promising to prepare the remaining medicinal ingredients while she waits. Masato reaffirms his commitment to creating the special cure that will finally restore her mother's health. Time passes under a starry night sky as the quiet, snowy forest settles into a peaceful winter chill. Icicles hang from the rocky cliffsides as a cold wind whistles through the frozen landscape of the mountains. Hidden in the shadows, a mysterious figure watches the path ahead with a deeply contemplative and silent expression. A dragon lies ill in a cave, coughing painfully behind a decorative iron headboard. While waiting for mushrooms, Masato and Himari fly over the freezing and desolate Viling Sea. Chapter 6 begins as Masato thanks Himari for the ride toward their next culinary objective. Determined to find fresh ingredients, Masato smiles while contemplating the perfect meal for his companions. He recalls his decision to gather assorted seafood for a grand feast of homemade tempura. Scanning the horizon, he notices a potential problem with the environment below them. A vast sheet of thick, perpetual sea ice completely obscures the water, preventing any fishing. Undeterred by the barrier, Masato prepares to test his strength against the legendary frozen surface. He shatters the ice instantly. Flying nearby, Himari watches in disbelief as the unbreakable historical barrier crumbles effortlessly. A massive tentacle erupts behind Masato on the shattered remains of the ice. Himari explains that no human has ever managed to fish in these dangerous frozen waters. He is dragged underwater suddenly. Darkness and bubbles consume his vision as he is pulled deep into the ocean. Underwater, he realizes he has been grabbed by a set of colossal, powerful squid tentacles. A giant eye glares through the abyss as the massive creature coils around its prey. He surges upward using flight. High above the water, Himari screams in terror as the human launches into the air. The dragon's eyes widen as she recognizes the legendary and terrifying nature of the monster. Clinging to the prize, Masato prepares to harvest what might be the largest squid ever. Masato proudly displays his massive catch to a stunned Himari while hovering high above the frozen, viling sea. Deciding to finish the job, he confidently asks his companion if they should finally reel the giant beast in. He lunges forward, seizing one of the powerful tentacles to begin an incredible display of supernatural physical strength. With a swift and precise strike, he chops through the air to subdue the struggling legendary sea creature. The impact sends the colossal beast soaring through the sky, completely at the mercy of Masato's overwhelming power. A massive explosion of water follows as the giant squid is forcibly uprooted from its deep and icy home. Focused and determined, the former office worker readies himself for the final blow against the Leviathan's weak point. He explains that a strategic chop to the base of the head should effectively paralyze the enormous monster. Doubting if the standard technique will work on such a large scale, he delivers a devastating downward strike. Shimmering light erupts as the paralyzed squid floats helplessly in the air, its movements completely and utterly halted. The creature's massive eyes bulge in shock as it experiences the full weight of a master's high-tier technique. Having successfully immobilized the giant monster, he prepares to finalize the harvest before the effect potentially wears off. Flipping gracefully through the air, he maintains his momentum while planning his next logistical move for the catch. The giant squid begins its final descent toward the surface as Masato moves into position to activate magic. A colossal splash marks the creature's return to the sea as it crashes down onto the broken ice. Reaching out his hand, he initiates his advanced storage spell to secure the valuable and high-quality seafood ingredients. A massive, glowing magic circle manifests on the water, much to the absolute confusion and shock of Himari. He discusses the ambiguous definition of death, noting that storage magic treats paralyzed creatures as if they were dead. Feeling completely defeated by his absurd prowess, Himari sighs as the conditions for his storage magic continue changing. Finally, Masato decides to utilize his flight skill to explore the underwater depths for even more exotic fish. Masato swims effortlessly through vibrant depths, surrounded by a shimmering school of marine life. He identifies the small fish darting around him as a school of delicious smelt. He spots several horse mackerel swimming gracefully within the clear blue water. Deciding to expand his collection, he prepares to catch a few more choice specimens. A massive shadow with glowing eyes looms from the dark abyss ahead. A colossal tuna bursts into view, startling Masato with its impressive speed and size. He confirms the predator's identity as it glides powerfully through the smaller fish. Sensing a perfect opportunity, he draws his blade and readies a decisive underwater strike. He lunges forward. He strikes the giant tuna. He admires his captured prize, noting its excellent condition for the planned feast. Despite his success, he remains motivated to search for more variety among ocean life. A large shrimp swishes past him, maneuvering through bubbles and currents. He realizes that crispy tempura shrimp would make a fantastic addition to his meal. Letting out an enthusiastic shout, he dives deeper to complete his bountiful harvest. He leaps out onto ice. Himari praises his haul while he requests a visit to the local seafood market. They arrive at the busy harbor market where workers move crates of fresh fish. A merchant refuses his request, citing exclusive contracts with their loyal fishing boats. Realizing he cannot get help here, he searches elsewhere for assistance with his harvest. Masato stops in his tracks as a voice suddenly calls out from the bustling marketplace behind him. The store manager approaches, eagerly requesting to see more of the incredible fish Masato possesses. Stunned by the tuna's unparalleled fatness and freshness, the manager admits he has never seen such quality. He immediately offers to process the catch if Masato permits them to procure a portion of the fillet. Expressing sincere gratitude, Masato listens as the manager considers waiving the processing fee for such high-grade produce. The experienced manager marvels at the catch, concluding that Masato must have discovered a truly exceptional fishing ground. Masato reveals he has more fish from the same location and asks if they can handle them too. A look of pure shock crosses the faces of the market workers as Masato prepares his next reveal. The massive silhouette of a giant squid emerges from storage, completely dwarfing the surrounding harbor market stalls. Seeing their speechless reactions, Masato nervously asks if the sheer size of the creature makes it impossible to process. The manager, recovering from his initial shock, asks Masato to display his unique storage magic once again. Examining the creature closely, the manager identifies its rare features, including amber eyes and a bluish tint. He confirms it is a legendary Kraken, questioning how such a mythical beast could possibly be captured. Upon hearing Masato nerve-paralyzed it with a simple chop, the manager gasps and questions his humanity. Himari explains that the manager's intense reaction is perfectly normal when dealing with a legendary squid monster. Startled by the revelation, Masato realizes that he had simply viewed the legendary beast as a large squid. His companion further explains that a regular human should never be able to defeat such an opponent barehanded. Eagerly changing their tune, the market staff insist on processing the Kraken, labeling it a rare delicacy. Preparation begins under the harbor's awning as the team readies their tools for the massive task ahead. A worker reaches out to touch the sleek skin of the legendary beast as the processing officially commences. The harbor manager finishes processing the catch, generously offering the smelt and horse mackerel free of charge. Waving goodbye, Masato and Himari depart from the harbor market while the grateful staff cheers for their success. Once they are alone, Masato mentions a new plan to Himari, sparking curiosity about his next ambitious goal. He requests a ride back to the sea, and although confused, Himari agrees to transport him once again. They arrive at a secluded coastal spot where Himari questions the purpose of returning to the open water. Masato prepares to explain his reasoning, keeping a mysterious air about the ingredients he still needs to acquire. He extends his hand over the water, readying himself to perform a specialized magical technique for resource gathering. Chanting with confidence, Masato activates his advanced alchemy skill, manifesting a complex magic circle upon the sea's surface. Watching from above, Himari wonders what outrageous feat Masato will perform next, given his history of impossible actions. The dragon lets out a cry of pure astonishment as a shimmering substance begins to emerge from the waves. A brilliant trail of light rises from the ocean, signaling the successful completion of his unprecedented alchemical process. Himari screams in disbelief upon seeing a floating orb of pure salt, which Masato confirms with casual indifference. He justifies using high-tier alchemy to save on salt costs, admitting it might be overkill for simple seasoning. Himari scolds him for using such rare skills so lightly, while the tiny dryads observe with intense curiosity. Suddenly remembering another task, Masato mentions needing more ingredients, causing Himari to sigh at his relentless pursuit. As they soar through the sky, Masato prepares to make another request for a specific resource from nature. He asks Himari to help him gather wild hops, catching the legendary dragon off guard with his request. With a glimmer in his eyes, Masato expresses a deep desire to create a specific beverage from home. The story transitions as the harbor fishermen finish processing the legendary Kraken, preparing for the next chapter's developments. Himari calls out to Masato as the 7th chapter begins, signaling a new journey into alchemical beverage production. Himari approaches Masato in the field, announcing she has finally brought the specific item he requested earlier. Taking the small cones, Masato thanks her for the hops, while she curiously asks about his upcoming plans. Himari accurately guesses that he is planning something outrageous again, based on his track record of impossible feats. He smiles, admitting she isn't far off while preparing to reveal his grand culinary vision for the group. He envisions a magnificent spread featuring crispy seafood, savory soy sauce, and a large mug of cold beer. Sparkles fill Himari's eyes as she excitedly anticipates tasting whatever delicious creation Masato has in store. Masato halts her enthusiasm, explaining that he still needs to finish several complex preparations before they can eat. To accelerate the process, he produces a rare dubbing card from his inventory to duplicate a vital structure. A second magical vinyl house manifests instantly beside the original, appearing through the power of his dungeon loot. Himari watches with a puzzled expression, wondering exactly what he intends to plant within this newly copied facility. Kneeling down, Masato carefully uses a dropper to apply a special substance to the dark, fertile soil. He applies a fast-growing stimulant to the ground, hoping to rapidly develop his next unique and essential crop. Plumes of white vapor erupt as the plant grows with such terrifying speed that Masato fears he overdid it. Himari stares in total shock as he explains that these oversized beans are the primary ingredient for soy sauce. He notes that further steps are required, leaving Himari to wonder how simple plants become a liquid seasoning. Shifting his focus, Masato asks Himari to accompany him into the local town for some important business. They visit a professional realtor who welcomes them warmly and inquires about the specific items they seek. Masato clarifies that he is looking for a large vacant lot while browsing through their available property catalog. A completely baffled Himari questions why a vacant lot is necessary just to prepare some simple food seasonings. He reveals his next plan is to utilize master-level architecture to construct a massive food processing factory. Masato selects a choice piece of land, but the realtor reveals the steep price of 3 million ethers. Consequently, the realtor suggests a loan secured by a guarantor or valuable items provided as necessary collateral. Admitting he lacks the cash, Masato agrees to the loan and prepares his most valuable asset for appraisal. He presents a rare card as collateral, prompting the realtor to accept with a polite and curious smile. Suddenly, the realtor's expression shifts into one of absolute and utter shock as she recognizes the legendary item. She screams in disbelief, identifying the priceless Wyvern circulation card with only 5 existing copies in the world. Masato casually explains it is his only option, while the tiny dryads worry about such a valuable trade. Noticing Himari's smug expression, Masato wonders why she feels so proud of his own absurd and impossible actions. The group moves outside to the newly acquired property, while the dryads fret over managing such a treasure. Sunlight shines over the town's architecture as Masato approaches the vacant lot to begin his ambitious construction. Standing in the empty field, Masato faces Himari's questions regarding the complex process of making his planned seasoning. Raising his hand, he prepares to unleash another world-breaking skill to transform the quiet landscape before him. With a powerful shout, Masato invokes his master-level architecture skill to manifest the design within his mind. A pillar of light erupts from the ground, signaling the start of a massive magical structural manifestation. Closing his eyes, he focuses intensely to perfectly imagine every detail of a functional modern factory setup. He recalls his job-hunting research into food manufacturers to accurately recreate the necessary industrial equipment and processes. A colossal white silhouette begins to take shape amidst swirling energy as the magical construction reaches its peak. Himari watches calmly, claiming she is finally used to his absurd feats and will never be shocked again. Her composure crumbles instantly as she looks up, her eyes widening in shock at the emerging giant. A massive multi-story factory appears, leaving Himari screaming in total shock at the sight of the impossible building. Masato proudly announces that factory construction is complete, noting that every floor has been meticulously crafted. He explains the 2-day plan for wheat harvesting, while the dryads remain absolutely stunned by the scale of preparation. Himari beams with excitement, eager to witness the progress of their specialized crop cultivation projects. Looking up at the clear sky, the group prepares for the next stage of their intensive farming endeavors. Meanwhile, the Alhilda mushrooms continue to develop within the safety of the magical double vinyl houses. Masato meticulously administers the 3rd application of growth stimulant to ensure the legendary medicine develops correctly. The pair observes the tiny mushroom, which has finally grown large enough to be seen with the naked eye. Closing her eyes, Himari silently urges her ailing mother to hold on just a single moment longer. Shifting their focus, they head out to the open fields to monitor the growth of the newly planted wheat. Masato requests the Dryad's assistance to summon a rain infused with the concentrated growth stimulant. Magical rain begins to fall from a single cloud, soaking the wheat sprouts with life-enhancing nutrients. Under the influence of the Dryad's blessing, the wheat stalks surge upward at an impossible speed. Witnessing the rapid maturation, Masato marvels at the golden field that appears ready for an immediate harvest. Taking a sample, he decides to utilize his appraisal skill to verify the properties of this supernatural crop. The system reveals it is super low glycemic wheat, perfectly safe for diabetics and possessing unparalleled culinary quality. Masato is flabbergasted by the unreasonable attributes of his food, while the dryads take pride in their work. The companions stroll through the vast, swaying fields of mature wheat under the bright afternoon sun. After a job well done, they prepare to move the harvest into the mysterious new factory building. Anticipation builds as they approach the massive industrial structure to finally utilize the mysterious processing machines. The first floor of the factory begins operations, handling the massive tasks of dehydrating and dehusking the grain. Golden wheat pours steadily into the intake bin, while a tiny dryad watches the automated process in shock. Masato explains the factory's functions to Himari, detailing how the machines automatically dehydrate and dehusk the massive harvest. While Himari struggles to comprehend the concept of automation, Masato prepares to move the finished grain into storage. Activating his spatial magic, Masato efficiently transfers the processed wheat into his infinite storage dimension for safekeeping. The status window reveals a staggering yield of 7 tons, far exceeding the natural output for a single hectare. With the raw materials secured, Masato leads the group to the next floor to begin the industrial processing phase. Himari observes the massive, whirring machinery with growing bewilderment, questioning if food production is truly supposed to be automatic. Looking increasingly skeptical, the Dragon Princess asks for reassurance that they are actually preparing food rather than magical weapons. Masato details the 4th floor's specialized beer production equipment, including massive fermentation tanks and a complex filtration system. The 3rd floor houses the Moromi tanks and heavy-duty compressors required for large-scale traditional soy sauce production. Meanwhile, the 2nd floor is outfitted with modern roller mills and sifters designed for high-efficiency flour production. Overwhelmed by the revolutionary technology, Himari wonders how simple cooking led to the creation of an industrial empire. Masato encourages his companion to ignore the complex engineering and simply focus on the quality of the final products. He promises that the end result will be nothing but incredibly delicious food, easing the dragon's confusion with confidence. Massive industrial pipes and vats hum with power as the factory begins the long process of refining the harvest. Chapter 8 begins as the group celebrates the completion of the shoyukoji, eagerly anticipating their blissful evening drink. Masato examines the bottled results with a pensive expression, realizing that one final hurdle remains for the seasoning. A crestfallen Himari learns that the seasoning traditionally requires an entire year to mature before reaching perfection. Seeing their disappointment, Masato reveals he has discovered a specialized skill capable of bypassing the lengthy aging process. He invokes time manipulation, manifesting complex glowing magic circles to artificially accelerate the maturation of his gourmet creations. Magical light envelops the bottle as Masato successfully activates his time manipulation skill to mature the contents. The liquid inside the vessel shifts into a deep, dark color, prompting a shocked reaction from Himari. Himari panics upon seeing the black liquid, assuming the entire batch has unfortunately become rotten and inedible. Masato calmly clarifies that high-quality matured soy sauce is naturally supposed to possess such a rich, dark hue. Despite his explanation, Himari finds the concept of using sacred time magic for simple seasonings quite bizarre. An illustration details the conventional use of time manipulation, which typically only halts an object's physical movement. Furthermore, Masato compares skipping time to using stimulants, explaining how he achieved a year of maturation instantly. Looking completely dazed, Himari and the tiny dryads struggle to process his illogical application of legendary magic. Masato reassures his stunned companions, telling them they shouldn't be so surprised by his efficient culinary shortcuts. Himari points out that such power should theoretically make his previous growth accelerants entirely redundant and unnecessary. A helpful chart distinguishes between speeding up time, which withers plants, and accelerating growth rates for harvesting. Moving on, Masato begins carefully pouring the freshly matured liquid into a secondary container for the next stage. He explains the unique properties of raw soy sauce, noting its special unboiled flavor obtained after the pressing. Dark, savory liquid fills the pot, releasing a steaming aroma that signals the successful creation of authentic seasoning. Unable to wait, an ecstatic Himari rushes forward with her utensils, before Masato warns her to slow down. He insists that more preparation is required, much to the disappointment of the hungry dragon and the dryads. Leaving the factory briefly, the pair heads outside as Masato mentions a few additional tasks he must complete. Standing before a patch of earth, he raises his arm to perform yet another display of alchemical prowess. Activating advanced alchemy, he begins transmuting common environmental materials into dozens of perfectly formed glass bottles. Himari screams in total amazement as a mountain of containers manifests instantly from the ground before her. Masato explains they'll use the newly crafted bottles for the fourth floor's high-quality beverage production. Outside, the massive factory stands as a testament to his incredible architectural and industrial skills. A technical diagram details his innovative beer-making process, using multiple stages of magical time manipulation. Inside, automated machinery efficiently filters the liquid and fills rows of glass bottles on the line. Shimmering bubbles rise within the freshly bottled brew, indicating perfect carbonation achieved through magical means. He presents the mysterious new drink to Himari, promising a super tasty experience she has never seen. Next, they move to the second floor to collect a large sack of high-quality refined wheat flour. With all the ingredients gathered, the group excitedly prepares to begin their much-anticipated gourmet cooking session. Himari dons an apron alongside Masato, her enthusiasm for his cooking evident in her cheerful expression. She gazes intently, wanting to witness his premium culinary secrets from a very close and personal perspective. The scene shifts as the duo officially begins preparing a variety of delicious and savory drinking snacks. Masato expertly whisks together a simple yet perfect tempura batter using eggs, cold water, and flour. He prepares to coat his bountiful seafood harvest, including tuna and the legendary Kraken, in the light batter. Using a traditional technique, he sprinkles batter into the hot oil to create beautiful, flour-like crispy textures. Moving on to the next dish, he prepares a pot of boiling water for fresh green soybeans. A curious Himari watches as he presents a bowl of perfectly cooked and lightly salted edamame. Since the harbor chefs provided plenty of fish, they carefully plate a generous amount of fresh sashimi. The table is set with a magnificent spread of golden tempura and glistening slices of raw seafood. Finally, Masato produces a mysterious spray bottle to apply what he calls the essential finishing touch. The spirit medium spray will miraculously allow his tiny dryad companions to share the feast with them. Masato announces the feast is ready, impressing Himari with dishes she has never seen before. The group gathers around the table, joining their hands to give thanks before finally starting the meal. A tiny dryad happily samples the food, her face lighting up with joy from the incredible flavor. Closing her eyes in bliss, Himari savors the first bite of the mysterious and delicious new cuisine. Masato watches his companions enjoy the spread, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction from their positive reactions. The fresh sashimi stands out for its exceptional quality, surpassing anything the group has ever tasted before. Himari marvels at the salty sweet soy sauce, noting how perfectly it complements the delicate slices of raw fish. While Himari calls the seasoning moldy koji extract, Masato quickly corrects her with its proper name. Moving on to the hot dishes, Masato prepares to taste a piece of the crispy Kraken tempura. After taking a bite, Masato confirms that the texture and flavor of the monster meat are perfect. Both Himari and Masato celebrate the success of their feast, delighting in the exquisite sashimi and tempura. Masato teases his curious companion by announcing that one final featured item remains for their evening meal. He produces a mysterious glass bottle, finally revealing the product he has been waiting to share with them. A cold glass of foamy liquid is presented alongside a small bowl of salted green edamame. Himari stares at the bubbling foam in confusion, having never seen an alcoholic beverage quite like this before. Masato introduces the drink as beer, explaining that it pairs perfectly with the savory flavor of edamame. Taking a tentative slurp, the Dragon Princess experiences the unique carbonated sensation of the freshly brewed drink. Her eyes sparkle with delight as she finds the cold beer incredibly refreshing and thirst-quenching. Masato smiles while drinking, attributing the authentic taste and aroma to the high-quality wild hops Himari gathered. Excited by the result, Himari offers to find more hops while Masato plans to cultivate them himself. Masato enjoys edamamen's mellow flavor, while a dryad chirps nearby, enjoying the bountiful feast together. Himari is overwhelmed by the texture, noting how the food melts on her tongue as she eats. Satisfaction fills the room as they enjoy premium beer and snacks in the newly established factory. Masato reflects on his new life, grateful to enjoy familiar foods and unlimited beer after his transmigration. Abruptly, Masato excuses himself from the table, telling a confused Himari that he needs to head off. He spectacularly rolls into his comfortable bed, while the dryads and Himari watch his sudden exhaustion. Falling into a deep sleep, he marvels at a peaceful life that was impossible as a corporate slave. Night settles over the massive industrial building as Himari calls out to her resting companion in bliss. Chapter 8 begins with a recap, noting that the soy sauce malt has finally completed its maturation process. Masato pauses, preparing to explain a potential setback regarding the time needed for the sauce to finish. He informs Himari that the process traditionally takes a full year, leaving her completely shocked and speechless. Smiling, he mentions finding a unique skill that might solve their long wait and ease her disappointment. Invoking item temporal tuning, he manifests a glowing magic circle to accelerate the aging of the bottled ingredients. Shimmering energy surrounds the vessel as the seasoning inside undergoes a rapid and magical transformation of time. Himari watches with bated breath, witnessing the impossible maturation process unfold right before her very own eyes. Shocked by the deep black color, she fearfully asks if the sauce has rotted during the magical acceleration. Masato explains that the dark hue is actually the mark of authentic and perfectly matured high-quality soy sauce. Still processing the event, Himari shouts that using legendary temporal magic for seasonings is absolutely and utterly ridiculous. A diagram illustrates that the skill is usually for short bursts, not skipping through an entire calendar year. Despite the unconventional method, Masato confirms that his casual attempt successfully skipped a year of maturation time. Himari is speechless, questioning how Masato can simply attempt such a complex magical feat on a whim. Masato asks if his actions are truly that surprising, while the Dragon Princess remains in a daze. Curious, Himari wonders if this new skill effectively makes his previous growth boosters completely obsolete and unnecessary. A helpful diagram compares temporal tuning, which withers plants, to the accelerated growth provided by the booster. While watching him work, Himari asks if he is transferring the matured liquid into a different storage container. He explains the properties of raw soy sauce, highlighting the unique aroma obtained before the final heating step. The process concludes as the dark soy sauce begins to bubble in the pot, reaching its final form. An eager Himari rushes toward the food, before Masato warns her that she is getting ahead of herself. Despite the enticing aroma, he insists that there is still a bit more culinary preparation left to complete. Masato informs her that he also needs to step outside to handle another important matter for their feast. Standing in the open air, he raises his arm to prepare for another display of high-tier magical power. Invoking superior alchemy, he manifests a complex magic circle to transmute the very ground into functional glass bottles. Himari lets out a cry of shock as dozens of glass containers pop into existence from the earth. He explains that the fourth floor's production will be stored in these newly created vessels for their meal. The massive factory looms in the background as the internal industrial processes continue to hum with magical energy. A technical chart details the multi-step beer brewing process, utilizing temporal tuning to refine the liquid's quality. Automated systems filter the brew and line up the empty bottles to be filled with the finished product. Glistening bubbles fill the glass containers as the carbonation process finishes, resulting in a perfect alcoholic beverage. Masato triumphantly presents the freshly bottled drink to a fascinated Himari, who eagerly anticipates her first taste. Finally, they head to the second floor to secure the high-quality wheat flour needed for their next dish. Masato returns with the ingredients, ready to start their long-awaited cooking session together. Himari has already changed into a matching apron, startling Masato with her sudden transformation. She declares her intention to watch closely and learn the secrets of his legendary cooking. The pair begins preparing a variety of delicious snacks to pair with their brewed beverages. Masato whisks the batter, while Himari stares intently at his precise and expert technique. He gathers the seafood and sweet potatoes, preparing to coat each piece for frying. Skillfully, he flicks batter into the hot oil to create decorative, flour-like crispy textures. Moving on, he prepares a pot of boiling water for the fresh soybeans. He proudly presents the finished edamame to a bewildered but highly intrigued Himari. With the sashimi already sliced, he invites her to plate as much as she desires. The table is finally set with a magnificent spread of golden tempura and raw fish. Masato produces a mysterious spray bottle, preparing to add one final and essential touch. This special spirit mediator item will allow his tiny dryad companions to share the feast. Looking at the finished meal, Himari admits she has never seen food like this before. Clapping their hands together, the group officially begins their first gourmet feast in this world. A tiny dryad takes her first bite as Masato watches his companions with satisfaction. Closing her eyes, Himari savors the delicate flavors with a peaceful and happy smile. Masato is suddenly struck by the overwhelming quality of the fresh, homegrown ingredients. He proclaims it the best sashimi he has ever eaten, stunned by the incredible flavor. Himari praises the sweet and savory seasoning that pairs perfectly with the tender fish fillets. Masato corrects Himari, explaining the savory extract is actually called soy sauce. As she chirps in delight, he picks up a piece of the crispy Kraken tempura, noting its perfect golden brown texture. Taking a bite, he confirms the flavor is exquisite, while a look of pure satisfaction crosses his face. Both friends agree that the combination of sashimi and tempura makes for an absolutely incredible meal today. However, Masato halts the celebration to announce that one final and very special dish still remains. With a confident smile, he slides a glass bottle across the table to prepare for the grand finale. 2 large mugs of frothy liquid and a bowl of fresh edamame appear before the group. Himari and her dryad companion stare in total confusion at the bubbling, unfamiliar beverage sitting before them. Masato explains the drink is beer, emphasizing that it creates the perfect combination when paired with edamame. Taking a brave, large gulp, Himari finally samples the carbonated brew for the very first time. Her eyes sparkle with joy as she discovers the refreshing aroma and flavor are perfectly suited to her. Masato enjoys his drink as well, thanking Himari for the high-quality wild hops she gathered earlier. Himari excitedly offers to find even more, while Masato considers cultivating the hops in his own field. They continue snacking on the edamame, which Masato finds to be exceptionally rich and flavorful tonight. Delighted by the meal, Himari notes that the food practically melts on her tongue with every bite. The pair relaxes at the table, savoring the reward of building the factory and preparing everything themselves. Masato reflects on his new life, relishing the freedom to eat well and drink as much as desired. Suddenly feeling exhausted, he apologizes to Himari and decides to call it a night before she does. He gracefully collapses onto his bed, while the dryads hold up scoring signs to celebrate his landing. As sleep takes hold, he marvels at how this peaceful existence far surpasses his days as a corporate slave. Himari calls out to a sleeping Masato under the moonlight, while he dreams of pure happiness. Waking up refreshed, Masato stretches and credits his high vitality for completely preventing a hangover. He marvels at the convenience of his new life, realizing even headaches can be cured with magic. Suddenly, a realization hits him as he looks around the quiet room. Realizing something is missing, Masato wonders aloud where Himari has disappeared to this morning. A tiny dryad informs him that Himari actually left the room late last night. Recalling the previous night, Himari had tried to wake Masato up after their celebratory dinner. Finding him fast asleep, the dragon princess watched over him with a gentle and caring expression. Her attention turned toward the messy table and the empty bottles left over from their feast. Using her purification magic, Himari happily cleaned all the dishes as a final thanks for the treat. She then set off into the night sky to gather more hops for their next batch. Masato processes the story, finally understanding why his companion is currently nowhere to be found. He wonders if her draconic nature allows her to work endlessly, without ever needing a single moment's rest. Looking at the sparkling clean glasses, he is impressed by the results of her helpful purification magic. He picks up an empty bottle, reflecting on the intense enthusiasm his cooking sparked in her. He concludes that his homemade soy sauce and beer might be even more popular than he originally anticipated. Encouraged, he decides to visit the local guild to sell his unique and high-quality products. Arriving at the Agriculture Guild, Masato prepares to discuss the market value of his latest harvest. However, a serious-faced receptionist intercepts him and requests a private conversation in the back office. Caught off guard by the ominous request, Masato nervously agrees and follows her away from the lobby. Masato and Carol enter a private room at the Agriculture Guild, the door clicking shut behind them. Facing the serious-looking receptionist, Masato tentatively inquires about the specific reason for their private and sudden meeting. Carol suddenly produces a staggering pile of gold coins, dumping them onto the counter before an astonished Masato. Consequently, she explains that the Adventurers Guild successfully sold the Cinderella Clinic item to a high-paying buyer. Disbelief colors her expression as she reveals the total profit is a massive 27.4 million ether. Staring at the enormous fortune, Masato recoils in absolute shock, unable to comprehend such an astronomical sum. A frantic Carol demands to know what kind of legendary item could possibly command such an insane price. While explaining the item's appeal to royalty, he emphasizes his desire for the guild to act as proxy. Furthermore, he requests total confidentiality regarding his personal information to avoid the burden of dealing with nobles. Dazed by the revelation, Carol falls into silence while processing the incredible news and her client's staggering wealth. Finally regaining her composure, she thanks him for his trust and promises to uphold the guild's strict confidentiality. Shifting gears, Masato announces he has more produce to sell, shocking the receptionist with his rapid harvest speed. Moments later, they transition to the guild's storage area to begin the formal appraisal of his latest crop. The expert appraiser utilizes a specialized magic circle to carefully inspect the quality of the freshly harvested wheat. Upon touching the grain, the elderly man gasps in total amazement at the incredible purity of the product. Unprecedented properties are revealed as he identifies it as a miraculous wheat safe for even those with diabetes. The appraiser lets out a shout of pure disbelief, startling everyone present with his intense reaction to the harvest. Suspecting foul play, he aggressively questions Carol about the seeds, but she adamantly insists they were merely standard. After some intense contemplation, the old man concludes that such perfection is only possible through real dryads. Masato laughs nervously while the invisible spirits react, as the appraiser attributes the miracle to divine fairy intervention. Carol and the appraiser discuss the revolutionary wheat's market potential for the diabetes-prone noble class. Masato mentions he has a special gift for the merchant Cole once he finally returns to town. He reveals a handful of legendary wyvern circulation cards, wanting Cole to use them without reservation. The guild staff stare in speechless disbelief at the sudden appearance of so many rare relics. Masato casually mentions acquiring 9 legendary cards from dungeons, while Carol rushes them to the vault. Feeling overwhelmed by his absurdity, Carol apologizes for the chaos, while Masato looks on awkwardly. Shifting focus, Masato presents his newly developed seasoning and alcohol for the guild to sample. Regaining their spirits, the group eagerly prepares to taste the mysterious new food and drink products. They gather around a small table in the back room for a formal tasting session. First, Masato serves sliced fish fillets and instructs them to dip the pieces into the dark sauce. Carol notes the strange yet delicious salty-sweet aroma emanating from the artisanal soy sauce. Sniffing the liquid, the expert appraiser begins to analyze the specific aromatic compounds present. A detailed report highlights the medicinal benefits of the sauce, including its potent DNA repair properties. While Masato is genuinely surprised, the guild staff designate his creation as a high-tier health-promoting food. Encouraging their feedback, Masato invites his associates to finally sample the combined flavors of the dish. Carol takes the first bite, carefully evaluating the texture and taste of the seasoned raw fish. The elderly appraiser follows suit, savoring the complex profile of the unprecedented and legendary seasoning. Wide-eyed with wonder, Carol exclaims that she never imagined raw fish could taste this incredible. They agree that this marks the end of the salt era and the beginning of the soy sauce era. Masato smiles with relief, concluding that sashimi simply isn't complete without the perfect accompaniment of soy sauce. The appraiser expresses delight over the premium squid, curiously asking Masato about its specific origin. Masato identifies it as a Kraken, causing massive panic as they recognize it as a disaster-level monster. Casually, he mentions plans to catch more for their taste, further baffling his stunned companions. Overcome by the exquisite flavors, the elderly man reflects on how truly wonderful it is to be alive. Masato feels immense satisfaction, realizing that his homemade soy sauce has officially become a legendary success. Moving to the next item, he presents a cold bottle and invites them to sample his brew. The beer is revealed to contain miraculous anti-aging properties, capable of extending a human's lifespan significantly. As the appraiser drinks, Masato promises to use detox magic to ensure their work remains unaffected. Carol takes a large gulp of the carbonated beverage, experiencing its refreshing fizz for the first time. Following her lead, the appraiser drinks heartily while marveling at the unique and foamy texture. He is absolutely captivated by the smoothness on his tongue, declaring the drink to be completely unprecedented. Carol agrees, noting that it is exceptionally rare to find any beverage served so refreshingly chilled. Observing their surprise, Masato realizes that this world lacks the modern technology of refrigerators entirely. The group feels like royalty at a high-class restaurant, prompting Masato to plan for increased production. Turning to technical details, Carol curiously asks about the specific manufacturing process behind the savory seasoning. Masato begins to explain the basics of using wheat and soybean koji to develop the flavor. He mentions the use of microorganisms for fermentation, leaving the guild members in a state of shock. They are stunned by his deep biological knowledge, wondering if he has discovered a brand new species. Despite their concern over trade secrets, Masato clarifies he has no intention of monopolizing the production. Finally, he inquires about Cole's schedule and learns the merchant will not return for 3 weeks. Masato plans to increase production of soy sauce and beer, while Carol agrees to manage the sales. Consequently, he decides to purchase a fresh supply of wheat and soybean seeds from the guild shop. Silence falls briefly as he prepares for his next financial task within the human settlement. Flush with his recent earnings, Masato heads toward the realtor's office to settle his property debts early. He approaches the familiar building, where he first secured the land for his massive food factory. Upon entering, the receptionist reacts with visible surprise at his sudden and unexpected return to their office. Breathless, she tentatively asks if he has come to finalize his outstanding financial obligations today. He confirms his intent to repay the loan, causing the emotional woman to weep with pure relief. However, she finds holding the legendary Wyvern circulation card as collateral to be an incredibly stressful experience. The town settles into a peaceful rhythm as Masato finishes his business and leaves the realtor's office. Proudly, he informs his dryad companions that the factory land property is now officially and fully his. Eager to continue his agricultural work, he asks the spirits to assist with planting the new seeds. Standing amidst his prepared furrows, he prepares to utilize his unique skills for the next planting phase. With a swift motion, he tosses the seeds skyward, relying on his extreme dexterity for perfect placement. The dryads marvel at the sight, noting that the wheat and soybeans are distributed with absolute precision. Next, Masato produces another can of high-grade growth stimulant to accelerate the development of his crops. He thanks the dryads for summoning the magical accelerator rain, which will soak the newly planted field. Shimmering water falls from the sky, delivering concentrated nutrients directly to the seeds buried in the soil. As evening approaches, Masato decides to conclude the day's labor and return home for a well-earned dinner. Night finally falls over the quiet city, marking the end of another productive day in this world. Masato returns from the market after buying fresh eggs and garlic for tonight's special meal. He decides to utilize his high-quality tomatoes and wheat flour to prepare a delicious dinner. Upon arriving back at his lodgings, he greets his companions while entering through the large wooden door. A tiny dryad immediately signals for silence, warning him to keep his voice down. Confusion washes over him as he wonders why the atmosphere has suddenly become so quiet. Walking further into the living area, he searches for his draconic companion. He discovers Himari fast asleep on the couch, clearly exhausted from her late-night harvesting trip. He observes her peaceful, sleeping face, noting the toll her hard work has taken. Realizing she has been pushing herself far too much, Masato feels a deep sense of concern. As a former corporate slave, he resolves not to create an exploitative environment for his friends. He quietly instructs the dryads to assist him in preparing food without disturbing her rest. With a plan in mind, he announces his intention to make a specialized waterless tomato pasta. He meticulously prepares the dry and wet ingredients before kneading the dough with his enhanced strength. To save time, he invokes his temporal magic to instantly complete the 2-hour dough resting process. Expertly, he rolls out the dough and slices it into perfectly thin strips of fresh noodles. Utilizing advanced alchemy, he manifests a modern pressure cooker to facilitate his unique cooking method. He adds the minced garlic, a whole tomato, and the fresh noodles into the waiting pot. Explaining the process, he notes how the noodles will absorb the rich moisture and flavor directly. Gradually, Himari begins to stir as the savory aroma of garlic and tomato fills the room. She watches from the couch as Masato works diligently in the kitchen to finish their dinner. Masato focuses on his cooking, while savory steam rises from the bubbling pots at the counter. Himari's eyes snap open as she is lured out of sleep by an irresistible aroma. Startled by her sudden wakefulness, Masato jumps while Himari offers a bright and cheerful morning greeting. The Dragon Princess confesses that the delicious scent made it impossible for her to remain asleep. Feeling guilty, Masato apologizes for her exhaustion, but she insists a short nap was quite enough. Himari reveals the surprising biological fact that her draconic species only requires sleep once every year. Hearing this, Masato feels a wave of relief that his earlier worries were completely unfounded. He encourages his companion to have a seat while the final preparations for dinner are completed. 3 generous portions of artisanal waterless tomato pasta are proudly presented on the dining table. Masato finishes the dish with herbs, cheese, and a mist of the essential spirit medium spray. With everything perfectly prepared, Masato gives the signal to begin their long-awaited and savory gourmet meal. Himari takes her first bite, her face lighting up with pure joy from the rich flavor. She exclaims that the concentrated essence of the tomato has successfully seeped into every individual noodle. Satisfied, Masato notes that his experimental cooking method resulted in the best and bounciest noodle texture. He reflects on the lack of pressure cookers in this world, wondering if they are marketable. Peace settles over the group as they enjoy the fruits of their intensive and magical labor. Masato proposes boiling some fresh edamame to pair with their drinks later that same evening. Overwhelmed by the quality, Himari swears that everything grown in Masato's field tastes absolutely incredible. Suddenly recalling an important matter, Masato pauses his meal to address their next agricultural goal. He gently asks Himari if she would be willing to accompany him to the field tomorrow morning. The legendary alhildaki mushroom finally begins to fruit, promising a miraculous cure for Himari's ailing mother very soon. Waking up refreshed, Masato stretches and credits his high vitality for completely negating any potential morning hangover. He marvels at the sheer convenience of his new life, noting that even headaches can be solved with magic. Suddenly, a sharp realization strikes him as he looks around the quiet room for his missing draconic companion. Realizing Himari is nowhere to be found, he wonders where she went while a recap summarizes his recent journey. A tiny dryad appears, informing him that Himari actually ventured out last night after their long, celebratory dinner. Recalling the previous evening, the energetic dragon princess had tried to wake him to share even more snacks. Finding him fast asleep, she watched over him with a gentle expression before deciding to handle some cleanup. Her attention turned toward the messy table and the empty beer bottles left over from their successful feast. Using her purification magic, Himari happily cleaned all the dishes as a final thanks for the delicious treat. She then set off to gather more hops, leaving the dryad to relay her message to Masato later. Masato processes the story, finally understanding the events that transpired while he was deep in his heavy slumber. He ponders if her dragon physiology allows her to work tirelessly without ever needing a single moment of rest. Observing the sparkling clean table, he is impressed by the results of Himari's helpful and divine purification magic. He picks up an empty bottle, reflecting on the intense enthusiasm his products sparked in the Dragon Princess. Confident that his beer and soy sauce are delectable, he considers their potential to revolutionize this fantasy world. He decides to try selling these new items at the local guild alongside his other high-quality premium crops. Shortly after, he arrives at the agricultural guild to discuss business and market his latest unique culinary creations. However, a serious-looking Carol intercepts him and requests a private conversation in the back regarding an important matter. Feeling a bit nervous about the sudden secrecy, Masato hesitantly agrees and follows her away from the lobby. Carol leads Masato into a private office, firmly shutting the door to ensure their conversation remains completely confidential. Facing her heavy silence, Masato nervously asks what this sudden and secretive meeting is actually all about. Without a word, Carol slams a massive pile of gold coins onto the desk, shocking him with the thud. She reveals the Adventurers Guild sold his Cinderella Clinic item and sent the incredible profits directly to him. Disbelief colors her voice as she announces the total amount is a staggering 27.4 million ether. Staring at the fortune, Masato recoils in absolute shock, his mind reeling from the astronomical and life-changing sum. A frantic Carol demands to know what kind of legendary item could possibly command such an insane price. He explains the item's high value to nobles and his desire to remain anonymous, using the guild as proxy. Furthermore, he emphasizes his wish to avoid the hassle of dealing with royalty while maintaining his personal safety. Dazed by the revelation, Carol processes the magnitude of his wealth while stars practically dance in her eyes. Finally, regaining her composure, she thanks him for his trust and promises to uphold the guild's strict confidentiality. Shifting focus, Masato mentions he has more produce to sell, leaving the receptionist completely stunned once again. They relocate to the warehouse, where an expert appraiser uses a magic circle to inspect the fresh harvest. The elderly man gasps in total amazement upon examining the incredible quality of the homegrown wheat. He identifies it as a revolutionary crop that even diabetics can safely consume, praising its unprecedented medicinal properties. The sheer absurdity of the find causes the appraiser to jolt backward in a state of pure disbelief. Suspecting unusual seeds, the old man questions Carol, while Masato tries to stop them from fighting over him. After some intense thought, he concludes that such a miracle is only possible through the power of dryads. Masato laughs awkwardly while his invisible spirits react, noting how they have been lending him their great power. They decide to store the groundbreaking discovery securely until their exclusive merchant Cole finally returns to town. Masato reminds Carol to deliver a special gift to the merchant Cole upon his eventual return to town. He presents several legendary Wyvern circulation cards, encouraging Cole to utilize their incredible powers without any hesitation. Both Carol and the elderly appraiser stare in absolute silence, completely paralyzed by the sight of such wealth. Carol frantically locks the 9 legendary cards into the strongest safe, while Masato casually mentions finding many more. Feeling deeply overwhelmed by his absurdity, Carol sighs in exhaustion as Masato apologizes for causing so much trouble. Shifting his focus, Masato presents his newly developed seasonings and alcoholic beverages for the guild members to sample. The staff perked up instantly, eagerly jumping at the chance to taste his latest and most revolutionary products. They gather in a quiet back room where Masato prepares a small table for their formal tasting session. He serves the sliced fish fillets first, instructing his guests to dip them into the dark, mysterious sauce. Carol identifies a unique, sweet and savory aroma, finding the scent of the new seasoning highly intriguing. Suddenly, the expert appraiser freezes as he recognizes the complex and sophisticated scent of the high-quality sauce. A detailed analysis reveals the soy sauce contains powerful flavonoids capable of repairing DNA and potentially preventing cancer. While the guild members discuss its potential as a health food, Masato remains genuinely shocked by his success. Encouraging them to proceed, he invites his associates to finally experience the actual flavor of his creation. Carol takes a large bite, meticulously munching on the perfectly seasoned piece of fresh raw fish. The elderly man follows suit, carefully chewing the delicacy while savoring the unprecedented depth of the flavors. Wide-eyed with astonishment, Carol exclaims that she never imagined sashimi could possibly taste this incredibly good. They confidently predict a soy sauce revolution, declaring it the superior successor to traditional salt and lemon seasonings. Masato feels a sense of quiet relief, reflecting that raw fish and soy sauce truly belong together. Finishing his portion, the delighted appraiser curiously asks about the specific origin of the exceptionally tasty squid. Masato identifies the squid as a Kraken from the Viling Sea, shocking everyone since it's a Calamity-class monster. Carol is stunned that he sees it as just an ingredient, whereas Masato plans to catch more since it's tasty. The elderly appraiser nods in emotional agreement, stating he is truly glad he lived long enough to taste this. Masato reflects on the positive reception, noting to himself that his soy sauce appears to be a major hit. Moving to the next item, he presents a cold bottle and invites his companions to try his special brew. A detailed explanation reveals the anti-aging beer contains ultra-polyphenols capable of extending a human's lifespan significantly. The appraiser sobs with joy over the wonderful drink, while Masato offers to use detox magic to clear their heads. Carol takes a tentative sip of the chilled beverage, experiencing the carbonated fizz for the very first time. Following her lead, the elderly man takes a long sip, savoring the unique and refreshing texture of the brew. He is absolutely blown away by the unbelievable smoothness, declaring he has never tasted alcohol quite like this before. Carol exclaims that her throat feels amazing, marveling at the rare opportunity to drink something so perfectly chilled. Masato notes that this world apparently lacks refrigerators, making his cold beverages a truly revolutionary and unique luxury. The guild members feel like they just dined at a high-class restaurant, while Masato plans to increase future production. Shifting focus to the technical side, Carol curiously asks about the specific ingredients used to make the soy sauce. To put it simply, Masato explains that the seasoning is created from a combination of wheat, soybeans, and koji. He further reveals the secret process of fermentation using microorganisms, leaving the appraiser and Carol in absolute shock. They are stunned by his biological knowledge, asking if he discovered a new species while he claims they are overestimating. Carol worries about sharing such valuable trade secrets, but Masato clarifies he has no intention of monopolizing the process. Finally, he inquires about Cole's schedule and learns the exclusive merchant will not return for about 3 weeks. They agree to start with wheat deliveries for now, while Masato prepares to scale up his industrial factory production. Masato decides to purchase more wheat and soybean seeds from the guild's counter. A brief pause occurs while he organizes his various tasks for the busy day ahead. Flush with funds, he resolves to pay off his property loan much earlier than planned. He arrives at the local real estate office to finalize his ownership of the land. Upon entering the lobby, he is greeted by the receptionist standing at the counter. The realtor reacts with visible surprise when she recognizes her high-profile and wealthy customer. Tears of intense relief stream down her face once Masato clarifies his intent to pay. Consequently, she returns the legendary Wyvern circulation card, admitting that holding it was incredibly stressful. Masato is genuinely puzzled, wondering if the rare item was truly that much of a burden. Stepping back outside, he celebrates the fact that the factory land is now officially his. Moving to the next task, he asks his dryad companions for help planting new crops. He surveys the prepared fields, noting that the rich soil is ready for immediate sowing. Utilizing his extreme dexterity, he flings a handful of seeds high into the morning air. The dryads watch in awe as the wheat and soybeans land with perfect, even spacing. Furthermore, he prepares to administer a concentrated growth stimulant to speed up the farming cycle. He thanks the magical spirits as they prepare to summon a special, life-giving rain cloud overhead. Shimmering water pours from the sky, delivering vital nutrients directly to the newly planted seeds. As twilight settles, Masato concludes the day's labor and heads home for a well-earned dinner. Night falls over the peaceful city, while his agricultural projects continue to flourish under the moon. Finally, he visits the market to procure fresh eggs, garlic, and tomatoes for tonight's meal. Masato walks home at night with a bag of flour, deciding on tonight's easy dinner choice. He opens the door and announces his return, only to be met with a quiet room. A tiny dryad immediately flies over to shush him, demanding he keep his voice down. He pauses in confusion, wondering why the atmosphere has suddenly become so still and secretive. Walking further inside, he looks around for his companion, who is usually much more energetic. He finds Himari sprawled out on the sofa, deep in a heavy and much-needed slumber. Looking closer, he observes her peaceful expression and realizes how truly exhausted she must be. Masato questions if he pushed her too hard, feeling concerned about her non-stop and dedicated labor. Recalling his past as a corporate slave, he resolves to avoid creating an exploitative work environment. He quietly tells the dryads they should prepare the food silently to avoid waking her up. Holding a fresh tomato, he explains his plan to create a unique and waterless pasta dish. First, he meticulously mixes the flour and salt before combining them with eggs and olive oil. He utilizes temporal tuning magic to instantly mature the dough, skipping the usual 2-hour resting period. With precise movements, he rolls out the dough and slices it into perfectly thin noodle strips. Invoking superior alchemy, he manifests a functional modern pressure cooker to assist his innovative cooking process. Next, he adds minced garlic, whole tomatoes, and the fresh pasta directly into the metallic pot. He explains that the moisture from the ingredients will soak directly into the noodles during cooking. Suddenly, Himari's eyes flutter open as the savory scent of the meal begins to fill the room. She watches Masato work from the sofa, lured back to consciousness by the delicious aroma. Masato remains focused on the stove, finishing the final steps of their gourmet and aromatic dinner. Sparkling eyes and a joyful expression reveal Himari has finally been lured out of her sleep. Surprised by her sudden awakening, Masato receives a cheerful morning greeting from his energetic draconic companion. She confesses that the irresistible aroma of his cooking was enough to wake her up instantly. While Masato apologizes for her exhaustion, she reassures him that a short nap was more than enough. Himari reveals the surprising fact that her species only requires a single sleep once every year. Relieved that his worries were unfounded, Masato reflects on how he was simply overthinking her fatigue. He encourages her to have a seat as he finishes the final preparations for their meal. 3 generous portions of steaming waterless tomato pasta are proudly presented on the dining table. Finishing the dish, he adds herbs, cheese, and a mist of the essential spirit medium spray. Himari immediately takes a large, eager bite of the fresh and savory handmade noodles. Her eyes sparkle with delight as she savors the rich tomato essence infused into every bite. Masato beams with satisfaction, noting that his experimental cooking method resulted in the perfect noodle texture. Realizing pressure cookers are unknown here, he contemplates the potential market for such revolutionary kitchen tools. A peaceful atmosphere settles over the group as they enjoy the fruits of their magical labor. After finishing the main course, they plan to boil edamame and enjoy a well-deserved evening drink. Himari expresses her heartfelt gratitude, swearing that every crop grown in Masato's field is incredibly delicious. Suddenly, a sharp realization strikes Masato as he recalls a vital matter regarding their next goal. He turns to his companion and asks if she will accompany him to the field tomorrow. A lone, glowing mushroom stands against the darkness, signaling that the legendary cure is almost ready. Himari gazes in anticipation, questioning if the life-saving Alhildaki mushroom has finally reached full maturity. Chapter 10 begins with Himari standing before the greenhouse, eagerly awaiting the harvest of the legendary medicine. Suddenly, Masato's voice calls out from high above, leaving Himari and her dryad companion searching in confusion. Shock and alarm wash over their faces as they finally spot Masato in a very precarious situation. He is helplessly pinned against the greenhouse glass by an explosive and overwhelming overgrowth of multiplying koji. After being rescued from the fluffy white pile, a dazed Masato explains his plan to increase industrial production. Regaining his composure, he leads Himari toward the specific facility where the Alhildake mushrooms are safely stored. Hope sparkles in Himari's eyes as she anticipates the moment that could finally save her mother's life. Walking together, she tentatively asks if the delicate medicinal fungi can survive being removed from their controlled environment. Reassuring her with a confident smile, Masato presents the hard-earned mushrooms they have been waiting for. A look of pure awe and shimmering wonder crosses Himari's face at the sight of the legendary fungus. Several glowing Alhildak mushrooms flourish in the rich soil, emitting a soft and magical light into the air. A detailed status window confirms their status as the primary ingredient for a miraculous and powerful healing medicine. Carefully reaching out, Masato prepares to harvest one of the small yet incredibly precious glowing medicinal mushrooms. Holding the prize in her hands, Himari lets out a sigh of immense relief and quiet happiness. She thanks Masato profusely, explaining that just a single mushroom possesses enough power to create a potent cure. When asked about the brewing process, she reveals she will handle the delicate ingredient ratios and refinement herself. Masato's mind wanders to stereotypical images of witches and cauldrons, while he considers the mysteries of local alchemy. Preparing for the task, a hand snaps a protective glove into place to begin the specialized medicinal processing. The sound of a pestle striking the mortar rings out as the potent ingredients are ground into a fine paste. Utilizing specialized laboratory equipment, the process moves into the final stage of refining the life-saving draconic medicine. Himari begins the delicate refinement process, her intense focus leaving Masato completely baffled by the professional setup. Clinking sounds fill the air as Masato watches her work from a distance. Unsure of what to expect next, he realizes that actual alchemy is far more scientific and precise than any fantasy story he ever imagined. With a steady hand, Himari carefully drips the concentrated medicinal essence into a waiting glass test tube. Masato marvels at her incredible dexterity, noting that her skill makes it easy to forget she is a dragon. He reflects on his university days, wondering if a similar work ethic would have led him to a better company. Suddenly, a strange and unfamiliar scent catches Masato's attention as he stands near his tiny fairy companion. Terror grips him as a nauseatingly strong stench fills the area, signaling a potential and immediate disaster. Reacting quickly, he activates a wide-range detox magic circle to neutralize the airborne threat surrounding them. An appraisal reveals the gas is a biological weapon twice as powerful as the infamous and lethal VX gas. Himari apologizes with a nervous laugh, casually mentioning she forgot that humans lack the natural immunity of dragons. Knowing they need a safer environment, Masato prepares to manifest a specialized structure to protect himself from the fumes. Utilizing his master-level architecture, he constructs a modern fume hood to safely handle the hazardous medicinal substances. He firmly instructs Himari to continue her work inside the ventilated cabinet to prevent another toxic accident. Wiping away sweat, he reflects on how his high physical stats barely saved him from a painful death. 3 long and arduous hours pass as the sun begins its slow descent over the peaceful mountain landscape. Finally, a shimmering and perfectly refined potion bottle rests in Masato's hands, signaling the successful completion of their goal. Overjoyed, Himari collapses onto the grass while holding the life-saving medicine as the dryads cheer in celebration. Exhausted but happy, she requests a refreshing drink from the factory, while Masato looks on with a weary smile. She greedily gulps down the cold beverage, finding the perfect reward after her intense and life-saving labor. Himari gulps down her drink, while Masato notes it isn't a mere energy drink. Masato asks if she intends to take the medicine to her mother right away. Himari asks him to come along, wanting to introduce her mother to her savior. Masato considers the offer, realizing he wants to explore more of this unknown world. He agrees to go, and a delighted Himari promises to provide the transportation. Transformed into her massive dragon form, Himari soars across the vast, sunlit mountain ranges. Reaching a snowy peak, Masato credits his high vitality for protecting him from the cold. He admits that he would surely be lost if he attempted this journey alone. Suddenly, a nearby tree erupts with a blindingly bright and magical light. Masato stares in absolute shock as the tree begins glowing in vibrant rainbow colors. An appraisal identifies the gaming Momi fir, which reacts to humans with immense mana. Learning it was created from dragon genome. He realizes the tree is her mother's work. Himari explains the glowing species was a failed attempt to replicate the legendary mushrooms. She gestures toward various other botanical failures that populate the surrounding snowy landscape. Nearby, they observe giant bees swarming around a massive hive filled with interesting byproducts. Impressed by her mother's tireless research, they prepare to continue their important journey. The group finally reaches the entrance of a deep cave covered in long icicles. Himari solemnly informs him that her ailing mother is waiting just inside the cavern. Masato takes a deep breath, preparing himself for the serious meeting ahead. They discover a bed inside, where a silent resting figure awaits the miracle cure. Himari looks slightly dazed after her drink, as Masato notes her impressive draconic constitution and endurance. She slowly blinks her eyes, finally showing signs of life after the exhausting medicine refinement session. Inside the quiet cave, a weak voice from the bed asks if her daughter has finally returned home. Himari's mother sits up slowly, looking pale and weary from her long battle with the incurable disease. A tender moment occurs as daughter and mother reach out to finally touch hands after years apart. Himari holds her mother's hands tightly, softly greeting her while holding back her own overwhelming emotions. The mother offers a faint, gentle smile, though her eyes appear clouded and unresponsive to the surroundings. Masato observes silently, realizing the cruel disease has unfortunately robbed the ancient dragon of her precious eyesight. Curious, the mother asks if Himari was in her dragon form when she arrived at the cave earlier. She looks toward a large, complex machine and explains how she managed to minimize its physical size. An appraisal reveals a Dragoncraft magic dialysis machine designed to purify magic and extend life by a decade. Despite the machine's ingenuity, Masato reflects that 10 additional years is tragically brief for a legendary dragon. The mother admits the device was her best effort to combat the illness that slowly consumes her strength. Himari grips her mother's hands even tighter, preparing to deliver the news that will change everything today. Noticing her daughter's sudden intensity, the mother gently inquires if something is wrong with her at this moment. Himari takes a deep, steadying breath, preparing to reveal the successful results of their long and difficult journey. With a determined expression, she announces that she has finally created the long-awaited miracle medicine for her. The mother stares in absolute disbelief, her mind struggling to process the impossible news she just received. A cry of total shock escapes her lips as she reacts to the mention of a cure for her. Trembling with emotion, she urgently asks her daughter exactly how such a miraculous feat was even possible. Himari explains that she refined the potion according to ancient and complex alchemical theories. Subsequently, she formally introduces Masato to her mother as her companion and benefactor. She reveals that Masato is the dedicated farmer who successfully cultivated the legendary mushrooms. Masato offers a polite introduction, identifying himself as a simple farmer from another world. The ancient dragon princess reacts with shock that a human could grow such a miracle. Himari acknowledges her mother's shock while confirming that Masato truly cultivated the mythical mushrooms. Himari urgently requests that her mother try drinking the freshly prepared and potent concoction. Accepting the offer with a soft nod, the mother takes the small potion bottle. She swallows the medicine entirely, as a tense and hopeful silence fills the cavern. Suddenly, a brilliant and magical radiance erupts from her body, signaling the potion's activation. Her clouded eyes widen in pure amazement as the disease's effects begin to recede. Overjoyed, she exclaims that her vision has returned, and she can see clearly once again. Himari prepares a final component, admitting that this is the absolute best she can do. She proceeds to administer a secondary treatment via injection to ensure the cure's efficacy. The mother watches her daughter's focused expression, gently asking if something is currently wrong. A diagnostic window appears, confirming that the test for the disease has returned a negative result. With a jubilant shout, Himari triumphantly declares that the legendary medicine has cured her mother. Masato reacts with total shock, amazed that the treatment worked its magic in an instant. He reflects on the process, comparing the rapid recovery to a modern emergency adrenaline injection. Finally, mother and daughter share a joyful and emotional embrace to celebrate the recovery. Himari tearfully embraces her mother, expressing her profound joy and relief now that the miracle cure has worked. The ancient dragon mother hugs her daughter back tightly, apologizing for all the immense worry she caused her. Standing nearby, Masato exhales a long, heavy breath of relief as he watches the touching family reunion unfold. Turning to Masato, the mother offers a sincere apology for her earlier doubts while thanking him for saving her. A tiny dryad chirps a cheerful welcome, while Masato smiles warmly at the successful outcome of their long journey. Now that her vision is restored, The mother observes Masato closely, sensing the true extent of his hidden power. She reflects on his incredible feats. From taming legendary dryads to cultivating the mythical mushrooms with such ease, the mother curiously inquires how Himari managed to cross paths with such an exceptionally powerful and mysterious individual. Masato explains their chance meeting in the forest and how Himari helped him reach civilization, sparking their unique friendship. Himari quickly emphasizes that they didn't start their relationship with a fight, much to Masato's slight and quiet annoyance. Accepting the explanation, the mother expresses deep gratitude for the fateful encounter that ultimately saved her life. Remembering a specific detail, she asks Masato to confirm if he truly identifies as a simple, humble farmer. Finding his occupation suitable for her next plan, she smiles gracefully while hinting at a perfect and new opportunity. The mother leads the curious pair outside the cave, signaling for them to follow her to a specific location. Standing under the vast open sky, she prepares to present Masato with a reward of unparalleled and legendary value. Everyone stares in total shock as a massive, craggy landmass appears, floating effortlessly high in the bright morning air. She introduces the legendary floating continent, offering it to Masato as payment for providing the life-saving medicinal mushroom. While Himari marvels at the relic, her mother instructs Masato to step onto the massive island to test it. Trusting his host, Masato takes a bold leap and lands safely on the lush grass of the drifting landmass. He opens his status window to check his mana levels as the mother instructs him to infuse the continent. Masato decides to test the continent's expansion by infusing exactly 5,000 units of mana. A massive magic circle erupts around him as he starts channeling his energy into the floating earth. Violent tremors shake the ground beneath his feet, catching Masato off guard during the activation process. Looking around, he is stunned to see the horizon stretching out into an impossibly vast, empty plain. Panicked, Masato worries that he accidentally buried the nearby mountain and his host's cave under the expansion. Himari's mother reassures him that everything is fine while telling him to come back down from the island. Stepping off, he is amazed to see the floating continent has seemingly returned to its original, compact size. A diagram explains that the island's external appearance remains unchanged, while its internal dimensions expand significantly. Himari's mother gives a thumbs up, confirming the enchanted soil is perfect for making massive agricultural leaps. Humbly, Masato asks if it is truly acceptable for him to receive such a powerful legendary item. She insists he accept it, claiming she has no further use for the relic now that she is cured. Furthermore, the ancient dragon announces that she has another special reward prepared for the young farmer. Reaching into her robes, she prepares to present him with one final invaluable gift from her collection. She reveals a single, glowing seed of the world tree, entrusting it to him and his dryad companions. The dryads swarm around the seed with intense excitement, eagerly demanding that they begin raising it immediately. Masato stares at the dark seed in his hand, wondering about the legends surrounding the mythical world tree. With a solemn expression, the mother confirms the gravity and importance of the legendary botanical treasure. She explains that this specific tree has the highest affinity for dryads and produces miraculous, powerful fruits. Furthermore, she notes that the tree's growth will help his fairy spirits reach even greater heights of power. Masato's eyes widen in realization as he processes the incredible potential of his new agricultural responsibilities. Holding a can of high-grade growth promoter, Masato wonders about the true meaning of the seed reaching greater heights. Following the dryad's lead, he plants the seed and utilizes a magical rain cloud to initiate its rapid growth. To everyone's absolute surprise, a small green sprout emerges from the soil almost instantly after the watering finishes. While the mother notes the tree normally takes a century to bear fruit, Masato applies his 3-month accelerant. He expresses his sincere gratitude for the incredible gifts, while the mother insists they cannot fully repay his help. Himari beams with excitement while watching over the tiny sprout, eagerly anticipating the legendary tree's eventual and powerful growth. Looking out over his new domain, Masato reflects on the sheer magnitude of the amazing items he has received. He smiles while contemplating the endless possibilities of planting every crop he has ever desired on this continent. The boundless cheat garden stretches toward the horizon as Masato wonders how to explain his massive expansion to Carol. He envisions a panicked Carol buried under a mountain of work, fearing her reaction when he buys more seeds. Several days pass quietly as the group settles into their new routine upon the vast and floating draconic territory. Standing at the edge of the cliff, the mother begins instructing Masato on how to carefully manifest his thoughts. Masato focuses his intense mental energy to visualize the specific form of the next island he wishes to create. Tiny fragments of rock begin to levitate and swirl around him, reacting to the pressure of his focused magic. Chapter 11 begins as massive boulders roar through the air, signaling the start of a large-scale structural formation. A new remote island manifests instantly before their eyes, leaving the dryads completely speechless at the sudden magical feat. The mother explains that he can now generate these hidden islands at will to expand his floating agricultural empire. Furthermore, she reveals that the very geology of the land can be altered into anything with just a thought. Suddenly, a fountain of thick black liquid erupts from the ground, catching Himari off guard and causing great shock. Masato confirms the success, revealing he was specifically visualizing a functional oil field to provide energy for his farm. Himari tilts her head in curiosity, asking Masato to explain the strange concept of an industrial oil field. Ready to begin construction, Masato channels his magic as a bright aura begins to envelop his raised hand. Swirling mana starts transmuting the environment into a clear, cylindrical object through the power of advanced alchemical magic. A lightweight, transparent container manifests in the air, representing a revolutionary invention for this ancient fantasy world. Activating superior alchemy, Masato mass-produces a fountain of clear vessels that rain down upon the floating continent's surface. Himari marvels at the soft material while Masato introduces his new and highly practical clear bottle design. Observing from a distance, the Dragon Mother finds it amusing that Masato prioritized creating containment items for his goods. Himari smugly claims she is no longer surprised by his feats, though the dryads clearly remember her previous shock. With the bottles finished, Himari excitedly anticipates how they will be utilized for the products from Masato's factory. The massive food processing factory stands tall against the horizon as internal systems begin their rhythmic operation. Inside the facility, Masato invokes time manipulation to perfectly age the massive quantities of beer and soy sauce. Flourishing his arm, Masato announces that every single component is finally ready to begin the final packaging phase. Himari agrees that they must repackage their high-quality goods into the new bottles to prepare them for market. Masato notes that using remote island soil to mass-produce bottles prevented a massive public outcry in the city. Gazing at the complex setup, Himari ponders the incredible sophistication of the industrial production process Masato has introduced. Automated machinery clanks and whirs as rows of bottles move steadily through the high-speed liquid filling station. Feeling slightly overwhelmed by the speed, Himari nods in silence as she watches the miracle of modern automation. Clear containers are filled to the brim with savory liquid, signaling the success of Masato's large-scale manufacturing venture. Himari continues to nod with a glazed expression, her mind struggling to process the sheer efficiency before her. Leaning in close, she carefully observes the final product while contemplating the impact it will have on the town. Masato and Himari finish their task as the Dragon Princess feels the weight of her long day. Himari waves goodbye to head home for sleep, while Masato considers staying to finish the industrial work. A status screen reveals a staggering inventory of over 100,000 bottles of freshly brewed beer. Masato beams with pride, calculating the massive profit potential of his latest batch of high-quality food products. He stares at the mountains of packed crates while remembering the Dryad's previous shock at the production speed. To simplify transport, he decides to utilize a Wyvern circulation card to store the massive industrial output. Shortly after, Masato arrives at the local agriculture guild to handle the logistics of his latest harvest. Carol holds the legendary circulation card with wide eyes, thanking him profusely for such an invaluable tool. Masato presents samples of his new seasoning and carbonated drink, suggesting a personal taste test for the guild staff. Carol observes the strange container with a confused expression, completely unfamiliar with the modern materials before her. He introduces the concept of a plastic bottle, noting its revolutionary lightweight and durable properties for liquid storage. Carol gingerly squeezes the soft container, fascinated by the crinkling sound and the transparent nature of the material. Chibi Masato explains the practical benefits of the unbreakable design, while Carol admits the invention is remarkably convenient. Since Cole handles their exclusive sales, Carol promises to keep the goods safely stored until the merchant returns. Shifting the subject, she consults her ledger and asks Masato about his plans for the next growing season. Carol is struck by absolute shock when Masato requests seeds for 10 whole hectares of wheat and soybeans. She frantically reminds him that his current field is only a single hectare, questioning his seemingly impossible request. Masato realizes she is unaware of his new floating continent and tries to think of a logical explanation. Worried for his safety, Carol asks if he was scammed, while Masato claims he received special new land. He nervously reassures the panicked receptionist, insisting that his recent acquisition is perfectly legitimate and highly beneficial. Masato explains the floating continent's mechanics, noting its dimensional expansion properties to a completely bewildered and dazed Carol. He casually reveals possessing 50 hectares of land, leaving the guild receptionist in a state of absolute speechless shock. With spiraling eyes, Carol admits it's normal to be confused by Masato, as he nervously questions her mental state. Realizing he has vast leftover land, she offers more seeds, while he begins a long list of various vegetables. Masato orders massive quantities of burdock and taro seeds, further overwhelming the poor receptionist with his astronomical agricultural scale. A financial breakdown illustrates how his land refund significantly offset the high cost of his massive new seed order. The scene shifts to the craggy, grassy edge of the floating continent, high above the clouds of the world. Masato and Himari appear as minuscule figures atop the vast expanse of their incredible and newly acquired airborne territory. Himari provides the requested wood ash, while the enthusiastic dryads prepare to pray for a life-giving magical rainfall. Expressing his heartfelt gratitude, Masato encourages his loyal companions to lend their incredible strength to the upcoming planting phase. Soaring through the sky, Himari, in her dragon form, expertly distributes the nutrient-rich ash across the waiting fields below. With a powerful sweep of his arm, Masato sows the seeds into the fertile soil of the floating island. The magical dryads focus their energy in prayer, summoning a dense rain cloud to hydrate the newly planted agricultural crops. Shimmering light erupts across the perfectly organized furrows as the plants begin their rapid and magical growth cycle. Masato observes his ready fields with a pensive expression, noting a critical shortage of the essential growth accelerator liquid. He realizes that gaining such massive land has created a desperate need for more productive dungeon-tier agricultural stimulants. Determined to secure more resources, he decides that he must delve even deeper into the dangerous local dungeon floors. Preparing for battle, Masato readies his blade while the system highlights his new physical attack nullification penetration ability. Having synced his sword to his intelligence stat, he turns to his dryad companion to ask about Himari's location. Hidden behind a corner, a nervous Himari watches her companion with a worried expression as the dungeon expedition begins. Himari looks on with concern, wondering how they ended up in such a difficult situation. A large sign confirms they have finally reached the 90th floor of the deep dungeon. Himari yells about the extreme depth, while Masato mentions starting from the 161st floor. Knowing her human form has limits, Masato offers a magical buff to boost her power. Himari appears hesitant and worried, while her fairy companion watches the conversation with curiosity. Masato accesses his status window, deciding on a specialized skill to support his companion. He activates timed Omni Enhancement, manifesting a complex magic circle that envelops the glowing Himari. The sudden surge of intense magical power leaves Himari in a state of absolute shock. Endless energy overflows from her body, enhancing all of her physical attributes evenly and powerfully. Masato notes the buff's usefulness for emergencies, while Himari chirps her enthusiastic agreement. A banner reveals they have reached the 161st floor, after bypassing many levels with ease. Looking around the dark corridor, Masato reflects on how they breezed through the floors. Suddenly, Masato halts in his tracks, his expression shifting to one of intense concentration. Colossal tentacles, lined with massive suckers, emerge from the darkness to challenge the intruders. A terrifying giant octopus monster appears, looming over the group with a menacing presence. Masato senses an ominous and dark aura radiating from the creature's powerful, writhing tentacles. Without a moment's hesitation, Masato draws his sharp blade to confront the aquatic beast. Moving with supernatural speed, he unleashes an attack that leaves multiple afterimages behind him. The powerful monster is vanquished in an instant as a massive shockwave fills the corridor. Himari beams with excitement, having finally caught his afterimage thanks to the magical enhancement.